It was a birthday present to us that you facilitated yesterday's meeting.
That's a nice one. Thank you. I don't think I have already ever received so much happy birthday from so many people from so many places around the world. So thank you.
That's great that you enjoy your birthday. I hope you can see my screen now.
No, not yet, actually.
Sorry, give me a sec.
Okay, that looks promising.
Sorry, it's very slow. It's like thinking.
For now, I can also post in the chat. We'll go.
Sorry.
Oh. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Sorry, I don't know what that came up. So we have too many things here.
I invite everyone in the meantime to get prepared and go to menti.com. I'll also put it in the chat. And the code will be we'll find it.
Hope, yeah, please, I think if you can start logging in. I see that some of you are already there. And just let's figure this out.
Do you mind reminding us of the code, Catalina? I'm trying to find this in my emails. Yeah.
7194.
7194.
0439.
0439.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Now it's coming through.
I'm not seeing anything.
You're already
Here
there.
Perfect.
Can you see now?
I can see.
That's good.
Quite a few players. Does anyone have any questions about accessing Menti or any issues? Raise your hand, let us know. Everyone's Menti meter.
Everyone's there.
Okay. Great.
But on my screen, it's not like that. It's a bit of voting sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was for 1 to 6 questions.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a very short quiz that we have prepared. So as most of you are already there, I think we can start with the quiz. So Lucy, here's the first question.
All right, everyone. Question number 1.
This is just a test.
Are you ready?
We need to check that you understand the dynamic of the quiz. So this is the most difficult question. So the most difficult question of the whole quiz. So waiting for all your answers to come through. Great. Everyone has voted. Great. We have remember that the faster you answer, the more points you get. So we'll see who was the fastest here. Jerome. He's
Wow.
on the lead. He's definitely ready. So let's go for the next one.
All right. Hope everyone's feeling competitive now.
So now we start. Remember, the fastest you answer, the more points you get.
Okay, choose one of the warning signs of heat exhaustion.
There are a couple of, there's more than one answer that is correct. So you have to choose one of them. Okay, we still have a couple of seconds left. 3, 2, 1. Let's see. Okay, we have quite a diversity of answers, but definitely high body temperature and red skin are not a sign of heat exhaustion. So just for you to remember, those are not. Red and dry skin might be a sign of other things, but I won't spoil more questions. So here you have the correct answers: excessive sweating, fainting and dizziness, and headache. Let's go for the next one. So no, but first let's see how's the leaderboard going. Jerome, you're too fast.
Because I trained this morning.
So here we go with the next question.
Choose one of the signs to recognize a heat stroke. Okay.
We have a couple more. We have 20 more seconds to go. And we're done. Time's up. Sign of confusion definitely winning. And the excessive sweating was not a sign of heat stroke. So just for those four that answered that, excessive sweating, it was a sign of, in the previous one, not did any heat stroke. So let's go for the next one. And Jerome, if you're still winning, no, that's not fair. Well, at least you should go after Jerome. You're very close. So let's go for the next question.
All right. Someone is having heat exhaustion. Choose one of the things you would do.
We have 20 seconds left. But remember, the fastest you answer, the more points you get. Good. Here, everyone answered correctly. That's great. And the most voted one was place the person in a cool environment if possible. Yeah, that's right. So let's see how's the leaderboard going. Good. Oh, look, Jerome went to second place. Why? What happened? I wonder.
I'm mad.
Come on, let's see. What's the next question?
All right, almost there. Choose one of the things you would do in case of heat stroke.
Three, two, one. Time's up. Good. Well,
Nice.
most of the people went for call the emergency services, which is great, but we have a couple of wrong answers here. Definitely provide cool water to the person in any case. It's not a correct answer. And apply cold pack or wrap ice on the abdomen is not a good, those are not correct because these might be good in other cases, but for heat stroke, definitely emergency services is the better option. And I think most of you answered correctly. That's great. We have, let's see, there are a couple of movements around. Alana, Bruno, JJ, come on.
Okay, is this our last question?
This is our last question, Lucy.
By now, we're all first aid pros. Choose one of the things you would do to prevent heat exhaustion.
Great. I think everyone has very clear how to prevent heat exhaustion, and I think that is a great job done yesterday. We have all the correct answers in this last one. So thanks everyone, and here we conclude our recap quiz.
Thank
Hope
you for that
enjoyed.
recap.
And just as a final thing, let's see who won.
Oh,
Oh, things are changing here. Derencam. Jerome!
wow, the birthday boy won.
It's normal. You let me
Your
win
birthday
because
gift.
it's my birthday. It's my birthday gift. Thank you. I think it's intentional.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Jerome.
Super.
Good.
Thanks a lot for sharpening our knowledge this morning and waking us up a bit, Catalina. So just scrolling down, I'm so impressed by how many participants have joined, spanning the Asia-Pacific region, also joining us from Europe, from Africa. It's also nice. We have guests from city networks. We have guests from research and academia. And so I think that it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our first presenter of the day, Sana Samala Eckstein, who will be sharing and anchoring us in the IFRC regional priorities. So we will start by understanding where we're headed as a region. And Sana, thanks for joining us today. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Lucy. Thank you so much for the introduction. And greetings from Asia Pacific Regional Office and the Disaster Climate and Crisis unit and team. Catalina, may I request if you can share the very short presentation?
Yes, coming to right now.
Perfect, and it's thank you so much to all the colleagues online, all the guests and participants. Yesterday was a wonderful session, and maybe before we see the presentation, just to share that I've been also it's been very interesting listen to many of the presentations, including relating to first aid, and I have a particular interest in heat and understanding heat better, living in Asia Pacific in relatively hot countries, and having a interest in ultra trail marathons in high heat conditions. So I'm eager to understand always the impact of heat on people, and including on runners, even though that it's of course a very different topic that we are focusing here in these few days. But before going into those specific Asia Pacific regional priorities, I wanted to look at the topic or highlight the topic from the perspective of, and maybe look back a little bit, a few years, since it is relatively new and emerging topic, and we are referring to it as the most ignored and rapidly rising climate risk, and that's kind of one of the angles for us in Asia Pacific and from IFRC perspective. And I wanted to also share a small anecdote looking back to 2018, and specifically the Asian Ministerial Conference on DRR, which took place in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. And we were supporting the organization, or coordinating and facilitating the organization of an early warning, early action thematic session. And there was focus on heat waves at the time, and we had Margareta Wallström, who was at the time the president of the Swedish Red Cross, but who we probably many of us know better from her role as the special representative of the UNSG for DRR. And as she was the discussant of this thematic session, and in her kind of wrap-up remarks, she specifically referred that, and it was a great session because we also learned a lot of new there, and specifically there were two new disasters that were discussed. So she was referring to Zud, to Mongolian extreme winter conditions, but also to heat waves. So basically, as disasters or as risks that we have only started considering recently, and the world did not really know that they were disasters. So to me, that is in a way, since of course since 2018, increasingly there has been focus on heat waves, and this first event this regional event on heat waves is really also an indication where we are heading, and where to place the attention in Asia Pacific. Catalina, may I ask you to move to next? Without going into a lot of details, but I also wanted to highlight the World Disasters Report 2020, which analyzes climate disaster trends and shows how we tackle the humanitarian impacts of climate crisis together. And there, while we have many priorities, we can see that the kind of the disaster trends range from flooding to or the impacts from floods, tropical cyclones, but also there were a grave attention or put on heat waves, basically stating that that 48% of global population may be exposed to extreme heat, temperatures above 37 degrees for at least 20 days every year by 21st century. So basically 2100s. So this, in a way, setting the kind of the mindset that this is really serious. May I ask you to move one slide ahead? And now moving to a little bit looking it from IFRC and the perspective globally, and then diving into the regional priorities. So basically, we do see heat waves, and this many of you and colleagues have been highlighting heat waves as a cross-cutting priority, cross-cutting in a way risk element. So for us, in December 2019, the General Assembly of the IFRC approved the strategy 2030 as the 10-year strategy for IFRC and the network of the national societies. And is in this strategy 2030, the whole IFRC network really has agreed to focus on its work on 5 global challenges. And these challenges represent the most pressing existing and emerging risks that confront our network, and will really require a committed action to manage these existing and emerging risks, including related to heat. And basically, so those 5 priorities relate to, as you can see there, to climate and environmental crises, evolving crises and disasters, growing gaps in health and well-being, migration and identity, values, power, and inclusion. And within our strategy, within our plans, we can see that they are presented as distinct areas. However, they are, of course, highly interconnected. And we can see that climate is, and heat waves is, a cross-cutting issue here. And while we have our global and regional targets presented under this priority, it relates to several of these other areas. So evolving crises and disasters, and of course related to health related other priorities. So this to highlight how we kind of frame it based on our global strategy. In addition, we wanted to highlight a specific global target that we have set for ourselves to be achieved by 2025. Therefore, everything that we do and our work relating to heat waves needs to have also that in a way thinking that how do we together are able to achieve this target and other sub-targets. So basically, it's stated that the indicator itself is that number of people better protected from heat in cities and towns. And the quite ambitious target that we have set ourselves is to reach 250 million by 2025 in at least 150 cities and towns. And for during 2021, we aim to establish the baseline for this target. So this is something that we really want to work together with our own network, with partners, and to really to be able to protect or to better support protecting people from heat. Now, please let us move to next slide. And looking this topic from regional perspective. So some of the priority actions that our team, Jerome leading this topic, have identified, building on discussions, of course, with many of you and with national societies from the region. So basically, setting up a multi-sector working group on heat waves that really cuts across different areas relating to health, relating to livelihoods, DRR, and other topics. There is focus on supporting knowledge exchange, capacity enhancement, and for example, this meeting is of course part of moving ahead with that. Then providing technical support and quality assurance for heat action plans and heat wave early warning systems linked with local national meteorological systems. And really, this is when we're talking about in that target or indicator, we are talking about protecting. So one of the ways of moving ahead with that element of the target is really to work on supporting development or updates of heat action plans and the establishment of development of early warning systems related to heat. Then it's critical to further develop and maintain a pool of resource persons from IFRC network for internal and external advocacy activities. And then focus, as I've heard also that today's session will be very much about collaboration. So through collaboration, innovate, catalyze, share learning, facilitate peer support in order to scale up actions. And lastly, but not the least, promote that national societies develop climate smart and multi-hazard contingency plans that include focus on heat waves. So these are just to give you an idea from the regional perspective where some of the kind of priority actions lie. Catalina, maybe go to the last slide, please. We wanted to also highlight some that building on our planning processes and where we see concrete focus on heat waves across the countries. This is building on as I mentioned, planning done last year for 2021. So we have several countries and national societies who have included key activities that are focused on heat waves. There are activities that are planned related to heat waves, or then that in their plans, heat waves are definitely listed as hazard. This is of course an ongoing planning process for this year and moving forward, but this is an indication that heat waves are considered as a priority in Asia Pacific by national societies and IFRC. And therefore, we really see many opportunities to move ahead and the importance placed on this topic. Without really further ado, I'll in a moment hand back over to Lucy and colleagues, and just wanting to again thank you for all this effort and the interest and the engagement, and really in a way this first IFRC regional meeting on heat waves, it's really a demonstration how we tackle together to better protect people from heat and move towards achievement or planning to achieve the target that we have set as part of the Red Cross Red Crescent movement ambitions to address the climate crisis and contribute to the global targets. So thank you very much, and it was my pleasure to share a few of these from the regional perspective priorities. Thank you. Over to you, Lucy.
Thank you, and feel free, everyone, to use these emoji icons, like the applause. Thank you once again to Sana, Manager of Disaster Risk Management at the Disaster, Climate and Crisis Unit, once again for IFRC APRD. Catalina, did we receive any Mentimeter questions? Here we go. Okay, so in terms of what has been done so far, I think we saw in terms of which countries are already engaging in current heatwave activities or planning. Sana shared that on her last slide, and we will, drumroll, hear more today from national societies. Sana, would you like to choose one or two of these questions to answer? If you're still with us.
I think there are more. There are a couple of comments, and maybe this one, the middle one, is one question. Okay, the other one, sorry. We have more questions coming through.
Yeah, let's. There's very good questions. Thanks so much. Maybe more of a. There's one very specific question relating to what is IFRC policy to work with state-mandated agencies for heat stroke in respective countries, in addition to working with the host national society. I would think that this is very much first looking this. Well, I'm not sure exactly from which angle this would come from. Is this from a colleague, from a national society colleague? But we would definitely. It's more of an IFRC role is, of course, to support the national society in its fulfilling the auxiliary role, also related to heat. So maybe, I mean, a more targeted answer could be received from examples from national societies, and then also from potentially from our colleagues who are working specifically on first aid and heat stroke related issues. I wouldn't probably be the best person to answer that. So maybe we'll park that and see if we have other colleagues who could address that. But then I see that there is more kind of these generic questions relating to what has been done so far, what are kind of the regional or is there a regional priority and action plan developed? What is a roadmap since the beginning? So as I was indicated, we have gone through, I mean, we have the strategy 2030 as the IFRC network, and that in a way already guides our thinking and planning processes, where heat waves have been lifted as one of the key priorities, and we have our own targets. There are also other targets, such as under the risk-informed early action partnership, that are relevant where we are contributing. So in a way, these plans are being detailed, and this specific meeting is, of course, to further support the joint action planning moving forward. So I believe that in many ways we are in the early stages of our journey, building the roadmap and action plans moving forward. We do have already in our operational plans and countries having their operational plans initial actions, but we still need to move forward with further action planning jointly, and this is one of the milestones for that. Thank you. Over.
Thanks so much, Sana. Thanks once again for your presentation, and thanks everyone for the questions. So moving to our next session, even more exciting presenters. Sana, during Sana's presentation, she mentioned the ambitious target of better protecting 250 million people by 2025. And I think that's a good segue in terms of what national societies are already up to when it comes to better protecting those most vulnerable. I would like to introduce Ailish McGuire, who will be presenting on Telecross Ready program. We spoke a lot yesterday about how to really support those most vulnerable, including those who are isolated. This project is such an exciting one. I hand the mic over to you, Ailish. Thanks.
Hi, thank you so much. Oh, I'm perfect. We've got the PowerPoint there. Beautiful. Hi, as Lucy just said, my name is Ailish McGuire, and I'm joining you here from Ghana Yurta, which means Ghana land here in South Australia. I'd like to start by first of all acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on, which is the Ghana people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to extend my respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander colleagues that are joining us here today. I work in the emergency services team here in South Australia, and I'm the lead on the Telecross Ready Heatwave response program, and I'm so pleased to be able to be here with you today to share about the program and to discuss the impact it has had on the community here in South Australia since its inception. So next slide, please. Beautiful. So in January and February in 2009, South Australia suffered an extreme heat event that claimed many lives and hospitalised many more. In South Australia, the maximum temperatures reached their highest levels in 70 years, maxing out at 48.2 degrees Celsius. The 13-day heatwave contributed to 32 deaths above the expected number for this period. So we as Red Cross were asked by the South Australian government to make phone calls to vulnerable people to check on their well-being during this heatwave. This service was so successful that the Australian Red Cross has actually provided this Telecross Ready service every summer to reduce further heat-related deaths and hospitalisations. And South Australian summers continue to get hotter, and since 2009, as you can see on the screen, the temperatures have actually surpassed those records. Next slide, please. Beautiful. So the Telecross Ready program aims to support those who are most vulnerable and do not have good support networks within the community. It aims to reduce morbidity and mortality rates during emergency events, reduce the number of hospitalisations and ease strain on healthcare systems, and to educate and prepare clients for extreme heat events through a prevention and early intervention program. So the program runs with the day before a heat wave, we'll send out a notification text message to clients and their emergency contacts. And this text message will contain preparedness information to encourage the clients to make a plan for how they're going to manage the heat over the coming days. On the day of the heat wave, the clients receive a call from a Red Cross volunteer. And in that call, they'll be asked questions about their health and how they're coping, including whether they've been drinking water, using their air conditioning, and if they have enough medication and food to last them that period of time. If the volunteer establishes that the client is unwell during the course of that conversation, an ambulance may be called to assist. If a client does not respond to the initial phone call, they'll receive 2 additional phone calls within 90 minutes. And if the client is still unreachable, an escalation procedure is activated to try and make contact with the client. So this could be through a nominated emergency contact, or in some cases, an ambulance or a police call out, just to visit the client's home and ensure that the client is not ill or requiring hospitalisation. Next slide, please. So data collected after the 2009 heatwave found that people who were living alone and who were socially isolated were at greatest risk of heat-related illness and death. With this in mind, we aimed to shape the program to support the most isolated and vulnerable citizens in South Australia. And to be eligible for this service, we consider a variety of factors, including if the client is living alone or if they're living with someone who is also at risk, if they have someone who can check on them daily during a heatwave, if they have access to other care services, if they have had previous instances of ill health during heatwaves, or if they have someone who can act as an emergency contact. And these factors are assessed on a case-by-case basis, and a decision is made based on that client's need for the service. Next slide, please. Thank you. As a result of our ageing population here in Australia and aged care reforms that make sure that people are able to live in their own homes for as long as possible, the majority of our clients are over the age of 65. However, we have seen a growing number of younger Australians, including Aboriginal Australians, who are seeking out support from our program. Often these clients have slipped through the gaps of healthcare and disability support systems. They are not eligible to live in an aged care facility or are not able to access support at home. Many live alone and have no family members or friends to support them during extreme weather events or emergencies. The clients currently accessing the service either register directly with Red Cross or are referred to us by other health support agencies. Next slide, please. In our agreement with the South Australian Government, our activation depends on the forecast reaching an average threshold of 32 degrees Celsius for 3 days straight. So this is calculated based on the average temperature of the day and night. So for example, to meet that average temperature of 32 degrees, the daily temperature would need to be 35 and the nighttime temperature wouldn't drop below 29. And often the heat maintained overnight is the most dangerous element of a heat wave, as it doesn't give the body a chance to cool down and recover. Once the weather forecast predicts temperatures that meet this threshold, we will be given up to 24 hours notice before we start checking in on our clients. Next slide, please. So over the last summer, our activations were actually quite unusual. I'm sure you've heard the word unprecedented thousands of times, and that's definitely something that we noticed with the addition of COVID. The activations didn't actually hit that temperature point, but due to a small outbreak of COVID in Adelaide, the state was put into a short lockdown that coincided with temperatures that rose to just under that activation threshold. And we found that during a heat wave, many of our clients seek refuge in shopping centres or other public places that have free air conditioning. But because of the lockdown, they actually weren't able to leave their homes. So it was all the more important that we still call these clients to remind them to take preventative action before heat stress could set in. And we found that due to the distressing nature of the circumstances, many of our clients also needed extended psychological first aid support. Out of the 3 activations over last summer, there were 413 escalations to emergency contacts and 32 welfare checks that were completed either by ambulance or police services. Thankfully, there were no hospitalisations as a result of these welfare checks, which is actually a real testament to our preparedness work with these clients, as well as our early intervention, which meant that clients were able to access medical support before they reached crisis point. Next slide, please. Perfect. So last summer showed us that even when the temperature doesn't reach the designated threshold, the heat is still impacting our more vulnerable clients. As you can see from this graphic, summers in Australia are continuing to get hotter and heat waves are getting longer. At the same time, our population continues to age. It is clear to us that activation parameters need to be regularly assessed to ensure that we can continue to meet the needs of our community. From our team's experience, we are also finding that there would be a lot of value in running region-specific responses. Currently, the activation threshold is dictated by the temperature reading in metropolitan Adelaide, where that can actually differ in up to 10 degrees from some of our regional centres. We've found on days where we've been activated due to an extreme heat wave, we've been calling people down south, and it has been raining and mild. So this has shown us the importance of redesigning and adapting the program to utilise changing technologies that enable us to get accurate weather predictions for specific regions. And in the shift to a COVID-19 appropriate working environment, we actually transitioned our calling system to one that required volunteers to be in the office to one that they can actually use from home. So that meant that we actually have capacity to do region-specific activations where we have callers calling clients in their own districts. And next slide, please. So one major success of this program model is that it can actually be adapted for different emergencies. So for example, we established a phone support service during South Australia's first wave of COVID-19, and the COVID-19 calling model focused on ongoing wellbeing conversations, incorporating psychological first aid principles. This also had a needs response model, which we were able to encourage clients to reach out to their community in COVID-safe manners, as well as referring them to support services where appropriate. This service ran for 100 days, providing support to 816 people on an ongoing basis. And we saw our client group really expand to a group of people who were vulnerable for different reasons because of the pandemic. So these clients varied from domestic violence survivors, people with no fixed address, people who were unable to access mental health supports, and people with compromised immune systems. As you can imagine, our volunteers were dealing with complex content in these calls while also experiencing the pandemic themselves. And this response would not have been so successful without the dedication and patience of our volunteers. Next slide, please. Recognising the success of this heatwave response program, we can really see the potential for this program to be beneficial to a wider collection of emergencies. We're currently in discussions with our funding partner to extend the Telecross Ready service as a multi-hazard response service. And we're also liaising with other state teams in Australia to have this program replicated before summer. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, I'm sure there's a few up on Menti, but if you have any questions about the Telecross Ready program or want more information on the content I've discussed today, please feel free to contact me. My details are on the screen, but thank you so much for having me.
Wow, thank you so much, Ailish. We have to quite quickly move on and have a slight change of plans to accommodate our next presenter who has a meeting in 5 minutes. Can I just check, Irene, are you good to go? Is it still okay?
No problem. So,
okay, thanks. And thank you, Bindu, for your understanding in the little switch up. Ailish, we will return to questions after we hear from our colleague Irene Liu, Manager Community Resilience for the Red Cross Hong Kong branch. Thank you so much. Take it away, Irene.
thanks. Can you all see the screen which I shared just now?
Yes, looks good.
That's very good. So hello, everybody. I'm Irene from Hong Kong Red Cross. So thank you for switching my presentation a little bit earlier as I need to attend another meeting later on. And today I would like to share with you all about the work of Hong Kong Red Cross for enhancing the community resilience about heat wave. So in Hong Kong, when daily temperature is equal or higher than 33 degrees Celsius, the day will be classified into very hot day. And Hong Kong Observatory will issue very hot weather warning. From this graph, you see that the number of very hot days is increasing since 1884. And the number of very hot days in last year reached 77 days. That is record breaking. In particular, the mean temperature and the mean maximum temperature and the mean minimum temperature are all on the highest record last year. So in fact, under the global warming, how does Hong Kong Red Cross respond? And in response to our corporate strategic plan of Hong Kong Red Cross, enhancing community resilience of general public and high-risk group is one of the key pillars. We hope that through our trainings and services, we can enhance the ability of our beneficiaries in dealing with the disaster. In March 2019, we launched a series of training to introduce the basics of disaster preparedness, including basic concept of common disasters, the concept of disaster kit, infection in disease, first aid principles, and psychological first aid in Hong Kong. In this curriculum, we include a topic of climate change, and the participants can know more about the impact of that. And we also introduce the greenhouse effects and the heat wave and these effects to the participants. So far, up to now, around 10,000 participants joined this course. And other initiative is that we also organize a disaster preparedness roving exhibition and carnival regularly to our general public. Participants can learn the disaster preparedness skills, including the practical skills handling heat wave through the interactive game booth. Over 20,000 people joined the event in the past 2 years. As you know that the social media is one of the key way to disseminate the DP knowledge nowadays. So we proactively release different posts in Facebook or IG regarding climate change and heat wave to enhance public awareness. Okay, Hong Kong Red Cross also developed a mobile application and launched in 2018. If you would like to have a look, you can scan the QR code on the screen and you can download it. From the apps, you can get the basic disaster preparedness knowledge, which is including the heat wave. So what you need to do before the heat wave and during the heat wave season. And the people also can find the temporary shelter, the location of the shelter, hospital, and police station. And we also will issue the push notification under various warning situation. Just like today, the climate, the weather in Hong Kong is very hot. That will reach 34 degrees Celsius today. So the Hong Kong Observatory issued the warning, and we use the application to launch a push notification to all those download these apps with the tips how to handle heat wave. In 2020, that is last year, we put climate change as the theme of International Day of Disaster Reduction. That is on 13th of October. Because it is under COVID-19, we cannot did many face-to-face activities. So we launched a whole month campaign to arouse the public awareness of the climate change and heat wave. So first of all, we have post a number of Facebook posts and IG posts, stories in the social media. And also we have developed an online game, including the tips against the heat wave, extreme weather, and climate change. So the especially the students can or the youngsters can play the game online, although they cannot go to school. And also we have a number of community engagement that we set up some street dashboard in the community, so reaching over 3,600 participants. Apart from the education part, we also launched 2 public appeal last year and the January 2021. For these 2 public appeal, we hope that we can arouse the general public's awareness and seek support from them so that we can raise funds to support the actions related to climate change and heat wave. For this public appeal, we finally altogether raised over 1 billion Hong Kong dollars. Apart from the public education and awareness program, we also delivered direct services for those high-risk group. So let me share a very, very short video clip taken by RC magazine team in 2018 to you all.
今年7月20几号是大暑啦，哇，热的我因为心脏病啊，我心脏病三条这个管都塞住了，心脏病是最怕的。边汉波拉到这边住，要不要绕？反正出来很凉快嘛，你到里面累死掉。
Yes. You can find that elderly people, especially those with chronic disease, easily suffered from a heat wave. Actually, Hong Kong Red Cross organized the humanitarian visit over 20 years, but due to heat wave, we start organize the caring summer visit since 2018, and we will visit 150 elderly singleton every summer. During the visit, we'll pass on the heat wave and home safety information to them and also conduct a very simple home assessment. For example, if their electric fans is out of order or not in good functioning, so we will replace a new one for them so that they can tackle the hot summer. And this second project that is focusing on the high-risk people is a DP project for subdivided flat residents. People living in the subdivided flat residence is another high-risk group because the subdivided flat units are generally in very poor living condition. They are mainly located in old buildings with poor ventilation and improper evacuation route. Some units even do not have a window, and it is difficult for them to call for help during emergency. If the unit is located at the rooftop, the temperature will be significantly higher, say over 40 degrees Celsius in the summertime. Originally, we kickstart this program in 2017, mainly focusing on the fire prevention, as the number of fire accidents happened in the subdivided flat is very frequent. But after we rerun the program in 2018, we add in the heat wave elements in our project. We conducted an assessment about the DP knowledge and living environment, same as the previous visit to the elderly people. If we find that the electric fan is not well functioning or there is any problem about the electricity, we will place a new one for them. And we also distribute something like we call it cool pillow, so that they can feel more comfortable when they are sleeping at night, because the electricity supply is not very stable in the subdivided flat, and many of them will not turn on air conditioning or even the fan during nighttime. So if they can have something that can help them to feel more comfortable during the hot summer, so it will be better for them to tackle the heat wave environment. So this is the last point which I would like to mention today is that after a few years working on the heat wave project, we really find that public education and service in response to heat waves is a very long way to go. Although we are still in the initial stage, I think that we should be more sensitive in identifying high-risk groups who are facing challenges under heat wave. And we also need to make good use of every channels to enhance the public awareness and advocacy. We know that climate change or heat wave is a silent disaster, but we really think that we need to work proactively together to make the society a better one. So this is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Irene. Wonderful presentation. Knowing you have a time crunch, I wanted to pose a question quickly to the audience. Do you have any questions before Irene has to leave us to squeeze in? Feel free. I don't know, Catalina, if you can already see questions on Menti. Can you tell us more about the cool pillow?
Actually, if normal we use the pillow is a cotton one, so it is a bit hot when you sleep over them, but the cool pillow is something like made of bamboo. The materials using make the people can feel cooler when they use that kind of pillow at night.
Thanks so much. And before you leave, I hope you see the feedback that you from Fame Ahmed GRC. Very good public-oriented initiatives. Very good presentation. Thanks so much for joining us today, Irene.
No, thank you very much. I will watch the record later on.
And if anyone has more questions for Irene, feel free to continue posting them, and we'll make sure that those are answered. We'll pool all of the questions together at the end of these 2 days and make sure that they're answered. So thanks a lot, Irene.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
And thanks everyone for your flexibility, especially our next guest, Bindu Agrawal. Thank you so much for joining us, Special Advisor, Disaster Management, Indian Red Cross. So I am really looking forward to this. We spoke a bit about, we've just heard this morning about, from our previous presenter, about anchoring all of these heat wave activities into long-term resilience planning as well as innovative ways to reach people with impactful messaging, which was a big question that kept coming up yesterday as well. How can we best communicate? How can we really form innovative early warning messages and awareness campaigns? So I think that this presentation is a wonderful one to answer those questions. Take it away, Bindu. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Thanks for having me here. And as you can see, first slide, we have been doing certain preparedness measures for heat wave in India. Next slide, please. On the very first day, Jerome has already informed us that there is no universal definition for heat wave. In India as well, we have different kind of climates, different kind of geography and topography. So for the context of India, the APEX organization, Indian Meteorological Department, which is working under ministry, it has defined heat wave in the context of India, that if the maximum temperature in the plains, it reaches 40 degrees Celsius, and if it reaches 30 degrees Celsius for the hilly regions, and any deviation, positive deviation from these temperatures is called as a heat wave. See, if there is a deviation of 4 to 5 degrees Celsius for 2 or 3 consecutive days, it is known to us as a heat wave. Next slide, please. Here we can see that the major heat wave incidents during the last 2 decades in India, starting from 2002, and many deaths can be seen in the year 2015, which was a turning point for India, because many deaths took place, and all the organizations, including Indian Red Cross Society, they started pondering how to avoid these deaths and how to take up actions to prevent deaths from heat wave, and how to take up the mitigation measures. So it was from now onwards that we started building up our awareness campaigns, our messages, our IEC material, and you can see that consistent efforts have given good results also. The number of deaths, it has decreased, though the temperatures, they have not decreased, but the number of deaths have been decreased with the consistent efforts. And in the year 2019 in New Delhi only, the temperatures had touched 48 degrees Celsius, and our air conditioners, they just were not helping us, and it was extremely uncomfortable here in India. And there is one more reason for rise of temperatures. One is the meteorological reason, that during the summer season we have high temperatures, but the other reason is increase in the gray structures and increase in the urban heat island phenomena, excessive use of air conditioners. So due to these reasons also, the heat wave incidents are increasing in India. Earlier they were like restricted to the northern region of the country, but if we study the data from last few decades, it has shown a trend that it has now moved towards central India and also towards southern India. Next slide, please. Thank you. There are four kind of preparedness activities. We have good early warning system in India. As I mentioned, that Indian Meteorological Department, it gives out forecast for heat wave and for other hazards also. And it gives impact based information. And since 2016 2017 we have been working very closely with the Indian Meteorological Department on two fronts. One is accessibility to the information, like we gave a list of mobile numbers and email IDs, so we get information directly on our mobiles, and that information can be passed on to the states which are vulnerable to heat wave and where for which the forecast is available. And secondly, we also coordinated with them for imparting training to our state staff and our volunteers how to access this early warning. One way is to get the message on the mobiles, other way is to directly go on to the website of this organization, and there is variety of information available. And thirdly, also they have developed a app. So through if we download that app, all the information regarding heat wave and other hazards like cyclones, like fog, like smog and cold wave and flood, that is also available. Next slide, please. I will be talking about flash mob now. Flash mob is a unique kind of activity. It is sort of use of folk media to catch the attention of people around and then start giving the message. So it is a coordinated movement, coordinated actions. People can dance, they can jump, or they can just fall on the ground and start singing some songs, start raising their voice and start giving their messages with drum beating or any other musical instrument. So this activity was undertaken by Indian Red Cross Society in the year 2017, and it was liked by many people, and a group of 15 volunteers, it was trained. In the earlier days of their training, they were told about what the heat wave is and who are vulnerable to this hazard, and what can be the impacts of this hazard on the people. And after having that information, the volunteers, they themselves come up with the messages, the kind of messages which should be passed on to the community. And later on they trained themselves on the dance movements and on the messages, and such kind of 8 such kind of activities were performed in the national capital areas like International Airport, the market spaces, and other important locations, and it catch the attention of people and the messages were made. So I will request Catalina to kindly click this link. It has a short 3-minute video. Yes. This will guide us to a link on your browser where it can be opened. Vimeo.com. Yes.
Can you see the link now?
Not yet. You might have to stop sharing and reshare. Not sure.
Okay. Just give me a sec.
If not, we can figure it out and share it during the break. Oh, here we go.
Yes. Thank you.
So let me just check the whole thing. Can you hear?
No, fortunately not.
Just give me a sec.
May I suggest that we watch it as part of the break, because we are running a little bit late, I mean quite late. and we could watch it as during the tea break time. Is it all right? Sorry for that, but we are quite late now.
Slide number 6.
Perfect.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
have
thanks.
it ready to
Thanks, Katerina.
to share in the during the break.
All right. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes. Here you can see we developed do's and don'ts for heat wave, and these were circulated among all the states. Later on, based on this information, as you know, our country is a multilinguistic country. So based on this, they developed their own IEC material, which has same meaning but in their own language. So on the right of the screen, you can see it is in Telugu, and it was used to distribute among a community and during their awareness campaigns. Next slide, please. Yes, this image is from 2021 only, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, when they were doing an awareness campaign for COVID-19 vaccination. They uh, they included this also, awareness on heat stroke and heat exhaustion, because this area it is prone to heat waves. So they distributed the IEC material, which I have shown you in the previous slide, and also they distributed the healthy cold beverages like coconut water, ORS, and buttermilk, and lemonade. It was a symbolic distribution to inform the people that these are the drinks they should take when there is a hazard of heat wave in their area. And we also have a short video from Gujarat State Branch, a campaign which was undertaken in the year 2018. Here is a link for that heat wave preparedness campaign in Gujarat. Katrina, can you please click that link? It is a very short video. Yes.
No, it doesn't let me.
Should I play it? Should I share my screen? I think
It's not right now letting me go there.
all right, I can explain that they conducted an awareness campaign in one of the towns of Gujarat, and they invited several dignitaries to this campaign. It was done in collaboration with the district administration and the local health department, and also the police department. They also participated. So all the senior persons, they held posters in their hand, in the local language, in Hindi and in English, all carrying messages on do's and don'ts of heat wave. And they had also created a selfie point. So if someone takes a selfie at that point, the person is carrying 6 messages along, like the kind of clothing, the kind of excuse me, the kind of precautions they need to take, the kind of like they need to drink a lot of water, and how to take care of other persons around. So such kind of awareness messaging was done during this campaign. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, Gujarat is prone to a heat wave, and it is a dry land area. It is towards the west side of India, and one of the districts in Gujarat, Banaskantha, it has been picked up for undertaking ecosystem-based DRR project for the improvement of drylands there. The picture on the right is the recent one. It was clicked some 2 weeks back, and you can see it is a very arid area and only bushes are present there. Next slide, please. Uh, in India, due to high temperatures and due to various other reasons, 70% of the geographical area, it is a dry land. And it is a big problem because it ultimately leads to poverty of the people, just because of scarcity of water. people, they cannot undertake activities like agriculture. They cannot take activities like growing fodder for their animals, for the dairy animals, and it can also affect the basic personal hygiene of people who are living in the dryland areas. So just to improve the condition of that area in terms of the soil, the dry land, and to improve the social status of the people in terms of economy. I should say, in terms of wash, in terms of economy, this project is being undertaken by us, and we are trying to build up the resilience of people in this area to this extreme weather conditions. So there used to be like local fights for water because water is scarce there. There is a picture of a pond. Uh, it is showing water only 1/3 of its capacity. And these ponds, they are able to provide water only for 5 to 6 months during the year. So they are filled up during the monsoon season, and later on, after 5 to 6 months, the water, whatever the water is available, it is used up, and the water level has gone very deep down. So groundwater availability is also very poor, and the water is saline. So the households and communities, they are we are conducting activities to build their capacities, how to restore the grazing lands. Like they can undertake rotational grazing of their animals on a piece of land. We can lay a piece of land unused for a specific period of time, like for 6 months they are not using a piece of land as a pasture. It will help in restoration of that area, and later on in the next year they can use this piece of land for grazing, and another piece of land can be provided for use. And they are also being taught on how to undertake rainwater harvesting to improve their vegetation, to improve the climate of their area. Ultimately, when the greenery is there, this is going to help in bringing down the temperature, and establishment of fodder banks, which is going to help them out.
Sorry, Bindu, to interrupt. Okay, no, that was just wanted to tell you that we are getting short of time. But
okay, okay, all right, thank you.
No, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay.
Yes, so much to pack in, and thank you, Bindu, for the very comprehensive presentation from flash mobs to eco-based DRR. This is really so much to discuss, so much to dig into. I can see that there are already quite a few questions for our presenters. Catalina, I'm not sure if you can also, if there are questions in the Mentimeter you can bring up.
Yes, just in a minute.
Okay. So we'll take a few questions and then we'll have a quick break.
Sorry.
Maybe I'll start then with a question to our Australia Red Cross colleagues. Ailish, if you're still with us. Hi.
Yeah, hi.
So you've been asked how many people are receiving the Telecross Ready service per year? And there was also a question about language. Instead of people served, clients, maybe you can explain a bit about that.
Yeah, not a problem. So the number fluctuates year to year on how many people receive the service. It's usually between the 700 to 900 point. But it's really important to note that this is actually only happening within South Australia. So only one of the states and territories in Australia. So it's quite a localized program. So yeah, between around 700 and 900 each summer. And language-wise, Jerome, I can tell why that would be a bit of a confusing one. I guess in Australian English, the term client usually refers to a service provider that sort of looks after a client, so not quite like a medical patient, but in the same sort of realm. The language actually sort of gets transferred to us through the referral service that we receive from aged care and nursing providers, where they refer to the people that they serve as clients. So it's just sort of continued on language from there.
Excellent. And there are two questions on the Menti. One is regarding coordination. So how is this Telecross Ready coordinated with national and local fire departments and other relevant authorities? Are there any other organizations which deal with phone support for heat in Australia? Any other hotline services?
Yeah, really good questions. That's a bit of a loaded one. So how is the Telecross Ready service coordinated with national and local fire departments? We don't engage in the Heatwave service, at least with the fire departments. Our main responsibilities and relationships are with the police and ambulances, and we have quite a good relationship. We're lucky that the way that the heatwave is declared is spread amongst quite a few different emergency services here in South Australia. So when that declaration is made, everyone's pretty much aware that there will be extra calls in and extra help required. So we have quite a good relationship with those emergency services, that when we do need to make those escalations, they really do receive them well and prioritise them, which is wonderful. Are there any other organisations which deal with phone support? Not in the heatwave context that I'm aware of. As I said in my presentation, a few of the other state offices are actually looking at rolling out this Telecross Ready service before this coming summer. So there are a lot of other sort of groups who within the Red Cross community who are looking at extending it out, but I'm not sure of any other groups who do it.
Thanks so much. Pioneering efforts. One last question about community perception is here. So how is this perceived by the community on the whole? Do you have any evidence, any feedback collected thus far?
From what we have received, it has been all very positive. It still is a program that you don't know about it until you need it, or until a family member needs it. And we are managing to really share and get a lot of clients on board without having to publicize it too widely. So from everyone that we do speak to, they are always very thankful that they receive the calls, and obviously the service has saved lives. So for people who are impacted by it and do receive the calls, they are really very grateful, and so are their family members. So that's always a wonderful sign.
Thanks so much for answering these questions, Ailish, and for your presentation. And also for sharing. You shared how the program has continued to adapt for compounding risks like COVID-19. There are other questions regarding COVID-19 and flash mobs in India. So I will now, let's move on to answer the questions about how. There are quite a few flash mob questions here, actually, I can see. One is maybe more of a comment. So Japan Red Cross has already introduced flash mobs. Thanks to Indian Red Cross. That's wonderful to hear. Yeah, but maybe we can return. Bindu, if you're still with us, can you share a bit in terms of how you are, if you've adapted flash mobs to the COVID-19 context, how has that affected some of these actions? Thanks.
Yeah, currently our main focus is on COVID response, and as you know, we are facing second wave, and flash mobs have not taken place since 2019, but prior to that, yes, before heat wave season, our states, they used to undertake this kind of activity, but since the onset of COVID, our volunteers, they are taking all kind of precautions when they go into community. and more focus is on COVID response now, and awareness about vaccination, awareness about COVID appropriate behavior. Yes.
Thanks so much for sharing. Before we go shortly to break, I wanted to share with you a compliment you've received from Fim Ahmed saying, excellent to use community-friendly language for IEC materials and the symbolic healthy beverages. Kudos to Indian Red Cross. How about we take a 2-minute break? Is that sufficient? Catalina, how long is this video? I think the break will be as long as the
4
video.
minutes. 4 minutes, but I think we can see at least half of it. I would love to see it all, but what we can do is we can post it with the rest of the materials and make it available for everyone, if that is okay. You know, sorry for the short time we have, but let's see all the amazing work.
All right, thanks in advance. We'll see you all shortly.
Sorry, can you hear the sound now? Sorry, I will stop it as it is the recap, but I think it was an awesome video, and we will make it available for everyone to be able to see it. So, Lucy, should we go ahead? Sorry, that was a very short break.
Let's go ahead. That was a short break. Next heat wave meeting we should all learn the moves to that flash mob dance. That was great. Thanks again for sharing. We will definitely share that resource. And everyone here, you're welcome to become a flash mob leader. Let us know about it. Safely, of course. Maybe virtual flash mob leaders for now. So let's move on to our next segment of National Society panelists. Yesterday, we received a lot of questions regarding how to anticipate heat waves. And we have a few colleagues with us in this session who are going to tell you how. So starting with our colleagues from the Vietnam Red Cross. As usual, please share your comments and questions in the Menti or here in the chat. Hiswa, are you with us?
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hi, thanks for joining. And thank you in advance for sharing the case of forecast-based financing in Vietnam, the urban
Yeah.
context.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Do you see my screen?
We can see it's not
Okay.
yet full, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Dear college, my name is Hoa. I'm presenting on behalf of Vietnam Red Cross today to share with you about the early actions that we respond to heat wave in our cities in Vietnam. So, as you know, that we don't have to say anything why we choose urban, because here we have like 3 cities, 2 in the north and 1 in the central of Vietnam for testing the early action. And then, as yesterday, we hear a lot about the who is the most vulnerable group with different risk factors that Mahab sharing. And here we in Vietnam, we focus on our outdoor workers, who are like the builders, the bikers, and the street vendor. And with our early actions, because the outdoor worker, they work outside and they are highly exposed to the heat. And in Vietnam, their working hour lasts long, from minimum 8 hours to 12 hours in the street in summer. So that's why we developed the early actions with the aim to reduce like providing communities cool shading for them, that we aim to reduce the occurrence of heat-related symptoms for the outdoor workers at the daytime, and to like also to provide caring to the indoor visitors, the working visitor, to mitigate the impact of extreme heat and to save life. So this is the daily support, the daytime support. And then in the meantime, we try to manage the retrofitting of habitation in the slum or dormitories. In this one, we try with the objective that we try to improve the condition, sleeping condition of those who living in the slum, because the outdoor worker, mainly the job migrant, they are coming from the urban, in a rural area. So they live in a poor informant system. So this is our objective. And then coming next, like if they have regular break at the daytime and good sleeping at the nighttime, that will help them to reduce the negative impact of the heat, his exhaustion, his stress, and even his stroke. So this is the detail of the early actions. We setting up and operating the community's cooling center to offer the air conditioners place. We set up a proper tent with a cooling system, the AC, and also the sprinkler system to provide a cooling place. And you can see that the temperature we measure outside and inside, and the difference of the inside and outside temperature is 14 degrees. So it's quite significant cooling reducing while they are exposure outside in the street. So in this cooling center, we have 10 setting up, equipped with the fans and the sprinkler, and we have a group of this facility to be managed by the Vietnamese Red Cross volunteer, who provide water, fresh towel, and especially caring to those who work in the tent. The volunteers are trained in first aid and in awareness, that they can do the awareness raising to the people for presenting and dealing with heat impact. In addition to the cooling center, we have the cooling bus is complementary to the cooling center, where the bus going around the street to assess more outdoor worker that they could not go into the tent, and then to tell them where are the cooling center, then they can pass by. And then lastly, that we have the slum visit, that the volunteer carry on the slum visit, providing cool tower, cool waters, in order to reach more people in the slum. So with this, and so that from the day care and then the night care, we try to plan for the retrofitting. And you can see in the screen that most of the slum and the poor rented dormitories, the roof is like metal sheeting and fibrocement, which is really like heat absorbed, high absorbed. We planned to improve the roof with the reflectiveness and install the roof sprinkler cooling system. And I say, if we manage to do that, it would be substantially reduce the temperature in the slum. But unfortunately, the retrofitting was not possible or was discussed due to the short lead time of 5 to 6 days, and also the difficulty to accessing the slum, because as you know that the slum in Vietnam mainly building in a not really high acceptance by the government, because it's really illegally built. So that's why it's difficult for us to access. But seeing that this is very effective with the cost of only 130 euros per room, including providing cash for utility, we would recommend to do with the Vietnamese Red Cross to do this, to take this early action, these activities as a long-term DR project. And we really recommend that if in future, like VNRC would have the natural-based solution project, they could consider to do something with the urban, within a slum, or the poor dormitory with the natural-based solution by the end of the year. So, and then talking about what is the difference that the Vietnamese Red Cross doing with the early action, we do more about caring. So this is the caring protocol and the guideline. So to explain how the volunteer provide caring to the target group. And the SOP is based on a series of procedures depending on the heat-related symptoms experienced by the walk-in visitor or the beneficiaries, and the volunteer constantly monitoring the walk-in visitor in order to assess the care. So with this SOP is described 7 steps. It's starting from step 1 to welcoming and providing fresh towel, waters, and to the beneficiaries, and also provide caring. At step 4, we are caring, like we make the volunteer do the health assessment using the form with the checklist form, and also observing the people who walk in order to find if there's a risk of his exhaustion or his stroke. And if it needs kind of emergency for the walk-in guest. And then also including the step 5 that we doing, like distributing ice material, doing awareness raising, providing with them with how to prevent from the heat related symptoms during the summer. And the volunteer, you know, like here that I go further in the step 4, that how our volunteer conduct the assessment. So we have 3 cases. If beneficiary walk in the tent and they have no symptom, they have no sign. So after step 4, we perform step 5, doing the communication, behavior change, and giving them the water or the bottles and asking them to stay longer. So this is the in case there's no symptom and no sign. And then the second case, if the people coming in have a symptom, any kind of symptom for his stress, and then if within 20 minutes the symptom disappear, we perform as a first day, going to step 5, step 6, and 7. And if it is still remain the symptom, then we would provide caring, like the volunteer, you know, like if they have like any kind of symptom, we do the to do the cooling down that body temperature by like constantly fanning into them, watering them, using the ice pack and using the wet towel in order to cool them down. And this is the second case. And the next one, the next case is that if the visitor has a sign, any emergency sign, so the volunteer immediately call the ambulance. And then while waiting for the ambulance, the volunteer constantly cooling down the body to cool down the body, the temperature of the visitor, the beneficiaries, by fanning and watering and using ice pack. And if in case they have the breathing cessation or cardiac arrest, volunteers were trained to perform CPR. And then this is coming to the testing result. We have been testing over the last 2 years, 2 summers. We see that with the time frame like 6-day lead time, 5-day lead time, the implementation of the early action is possible. With all the guidelines and SOP. And then for effectiveness, that we see that we evaluate why we during the early action, and after that we see that 80% of the visitor who was outdoor worker interviews, they said that they experienced at least heat exhaustion with 4 symptoms. And they said that they had a good rest in the center, and they wanted to come back in the next day, on the next time to the tent. And then we interviewed that 45 of them, say coming back on the last day, we do the early action. And with social acceptance of this early action of the cooling center, we have highly coverage of local and national media. We have people, authorities who were very like, and then people like our beneficiary really like and really enjoy this cooling center that the Red Cross volunteer provided to them. So, and then for value, we have estimated the testing value is for testing 4 centers and 3 buses, it costs €7 per person. But if we have like the EAP, we have 30 centers and then 15 bus, I think the cost will be much less. And so this is the high cost efficiency. And then the early action is very potential to be scaled up in the other cities as Vienna City. And the leaders can see this. So this is a testing result. And the key learning I think we have a lot of key learning after we testing first year, second year. But actually, I just, because of short time, I just want to share key points. So we decided that we launch the early action 1 day before the trigger reach, which means we start on the -1. In order, why we do so? In order to attract more target group. Why it's still not hot, and people know that where is the Red Cross cooling center, they can come there. The next day they can have a rest. And then also, in order to get people to know more about this early action, to invite them there, we launch the communication campaign like the Facebook, the medias, before we triggering. So we had 2 triggers, like Jerome shared yesterday, that trigger 1 is -6 day, trigger 2 is -3 day. We have these 2 campaigns to attract more target group to know about the Red Cross. And then also is for place. As you see that in the urban area, to secure a place for tent setting up is not easy. So we have to secure to have an MOU with the local authority to secure the location of the tents. And when it's triggering, then we can do it immediately. The third point is that we need a good networking with the local hospital and the healthcare center. Just in case of emergency, we need to bring our beneficiary, our victim, to there for further support in case of emergency. The other point is like, because of, to ensure the good communication, early warning system, we would improve the cooperation with the local forecasting scientists and the internal Red Cross system from the headquarters to the community level, to have the really short time and then people know what to do. And the last point is that with the local light trigger, with the 5-year return periods is high triggers. The Red Cross, the Vietnamese Red Cross, they cannot, it's difficult to replicate because it's only 1 in 5 years. So we developed a local light trigger with the annual return period, and with a clear guideline and clear caring SOP that we introduced before. So it is easy for the Vietnam Red Cross for scaling up this early action in the other city. So that is my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Big applause, Ms. Hua, FBF GRC project manager. So many lessons to unpack there. Thanks for sharing them. I'm sure everyone's pooling their questions. We are racing to catch up. We're quite behind. So without further ado, I would like to call upon my colleagues at Bangladesh Red Crescent. Ms. Hua mentioned the importance of testing and simulation during her presentation, and we have now a specific presentation on heatwave simulations in Dhaka. Saju, are you with us?
Yes, good morning and good afternoon to all.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay. I wasn't sure if you would be sharing your presentation or if we are sharing your presentation.
You can share.
I am sharing now.
Oh, okay, super. Thanks, Catalina.
You can see now?
Yes, we can see it. It's not yet in presentation mode.
Yes.
So
take
it away, Saju. Shahjahan, Assistant Director and Project Coordinator of FBF Project, Bangladesh Red Crescent. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to this presentation.
Okay. Again, good morning and good afternoon to all. I think Heatwave is the third or fourth disaster, will be the disaster in Bangladesh. And now Bangladesh government also concerned about the heat wave. And that's why Bangladesh Red Crescent Society, with support from German Red because we started heatwave piloting in Bangladesh, and as a piloting of this heatwave from last week of April to first week of May, we have done a simulation. So I am going to some learnings from our simulation, and also why we have done heatwave pilot in Bangladesh. Please go next slide. So this is the some media coverage published from in different media from last April. Like in one of the media published that around 300,000 farmers lost their rice production to heat stroke. In Barishal division, one of the rickshaw puller dies due to heat wave. And also another media highlighted that Bangladesh is recorded temperature in 7 years and aim to heat wave. And also another media published that mercury rises to 40 degrees Celsius as heat wave sweeps over in Bangladesh. And another media also published that life made very miserable as a heat wave sweeps in Rajshahi division. And so this is the sum of the media coverage highlighted about the heat wave in Bangladesh in last April and May. And also why we are going to implement this heat wave piloting in Bangladesh. I think most of all you know that Bangladesh is most vulnerable due to the extreme heat climate events. Bangladesh ranking is 7. And also Bangladesh is under the extreme heat wave hazard is classified as a high. And we are piloting this heat wave in Dhaka city because Dhaka is very warmer than rural areas, and because of also very human activity like material used for roads, building, roofing, absorb more solar radiation than natural land surfaces, and also population density and high rises buildings. And also urban population at risk from extreme heat. And we have done a study in Dhaka city. According to the study result, we found that the people fell sick and could not go to work for about 3.27 days on an average. Please go next slide. How we implement this simulation activities? So considering the COVID situation last month and still lockdown is going on in Bangladesh, that's why we minimize our early actions. That means we minimize our activities. So through this simulation, mainly we try to implement two early actions. One is the awareness campaign and another is cash intervention. The main objectives of this simulation or heat piloting is reducing risk of heat stress and heat stroke, and also reduce health expenses due to the heat wave related sickness, reduce the loss of working hour and ensure livelihood and food. So in the right side, there are some photographs on our beneficiary selection in the slum area, and also one photograph shows that our volunteers is distributing leaflet for awareness raising. Go next slide. Please, next slide. Here we want to show some achievements through this simulation. So for organizing this piloting heat wave in Bangladesh, we did the coordination and collaboration with Bangladesh Meteorological Department. We have a formal agreement with the Bangladesh Meteorological Department for getting their support. So they are providing us support, not only heat wave, also they are providing us support on cyclone. Good coordination and collaboration with the Dhaka city Corporation and also Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center, and also different hospitals, and also Directorate of Health Department, and Center for Diarrhea Disease Research in Bangladesh. And last month, due to heat wave in the southern area of Bangladesh, diarrhea diseases patient is increasing. So it was also highlighted in Bangladesh. So we have also very good relation and collaboration with the Directorate of Health Department and ICDDRB. Through the awareness raising, we use the mic, and our volunteers designate awareness message through distribution of leaflet. In the right side, map shows that which area we cover. So through this simulation, we covered awareness raising in the heat island area of Dhaka city. And under cash distribution, we distributed cash among 197 households. And also we have a schedule for conducting post disaster monitoring. And we have some challenges that since it is the new concept in Bangladesh, so that's why still people have some knowledge gaps, and they have lack of awareness and understanding on heat wave. And another challenges was for us, now it's a lockdown, and also we are facing some challenges through because since we are using because for distribution of cash and also time management. Please go next slide. So through this simulation, we have some instant learning. Maybe we'll be able to share more learnings after completing the first monitoring evaluation. So here are some instant learnings. That means a heat index at 38 degrees Celsius considered as a threshold of heat of a health impact of heat wave in Bangladesh. People are interested in learning about the heat wave and eager to know more about the heat wave and stage as a new concern. So when we distributed leaflet and when we disseminating a warning message through the miking, we found that people are very interested to know more about the heat wave and also very eager to know about heat wave. And also ongoing heat waves are having a negative impact on the work and income of day laborers. The simulation and piloting of heat wave help the particular governments authorities to be more sensitized on the heat wave and states, which will help in future advocacy on these issues. So hopefully we'll be able after this simulation more accurately implement early actions, and we will finalize our early action protocols accurately.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Saju. And congrats to Bangladesh Red Crescent on all of your progress in the recent simulation. Really impressive learnings already gained. Also during this challenging time, we will return to those after we hear from our colleague, the next presenter, Yuki Aoki, Officer of Development Cooperation Division, Japan Red Cross. Yuki, welcome. Nice to see you. I will request that we share the video during our break, if that's okay, because of time constraints. And Catalina, you will be sharing the presentation on heat stroke prevention on behalf of Japanese Red Cross, correct? If you're with us. Okay. Maybe Catalina's, here we go. Thanks, Catalina. All right, Yuki, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you very much for having me today. And it is very inspiring to hear from other national societies about the combat with heat. During using this opportunity, I'd like to share some of our actual practices carried out in Japan, specifically for heat stroke prevention related activities. You go back to the beginning of the slide. Sorry.
I think we're working on it. Catalina can't unmute and share her screen at the same time, but I know that she's trying to find the first slide. We still can't see it, Catalina. If you would like me to give it a go, also just let me know over.
Maybe I can share my screen if you don't mind. I have it.
Sure. Okay.
Ah, we have it.
Ah, okay. Voila. Thank you.
Ah.
Thank you very much for your support. Can you make the screen bigger? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So, like I said, today I would like to just share some of our actual practices in combat with heat stroke. As we all know, one of the life-threatening consequences of the heat wave is heat stroke or heat exhaustion. Thanks to the day one, we all understood that the heat stroke is preventable and its risks can be reduced. So, as mentioned during the opening remark from Miss Gwen yesterday, when it comes to this silent killer, what matters the most to the Red Cross is a loss of lives and loss of livelihood. This is about saving people's lives and alleviating human suffering. That is why I trust most of us are gathered here to better equip knowledge on how to reduce the risks of heat stroke and heat exhaustion and prevent from those heat strokes and heat exhaustion. I would like to just a little bit talk about our national context in combat with heat. In our country, the heat stroke is not really a newly emerging threat, but rather it existed from long time ago. It was even before when the international background started to discuss the impacts of climate change. So many people were hospitalized due to the heat stroke, even before the issues of heat waves came to us. So this photo on the screen was taken after the Great East Japan earthquake occurred in 2011. This photo well captured a scene during evacuation life in temporary shelters where the good sanitation and temperature management are required to maintain both physical and mental health of the affected people. As one of the recovery programs, the Japanese Red Cross Society supported heat stroke prevention activities in which children gathered to learn how to prevent heat stroke, and they drew pictures on a handmade fan regarding proper behaviors under high temperature. So what I'm trying to say is in our country and national setting, we are putting emphasis on education, particularly in our childhood. So I also learned a lot about heat stroke and heat exhaustion during my school days. And it was often during club activities, and the knowledge was provided by sports instructors and also from our parents. So I put emphasis on the importance of education when it comes to heat stroke prevention. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is the contents of today's my presentation. So let's move on to the next slide, please. A good practice from the Japanese Red Cross Hiroshima branch was found, whereas the Japanese Red Cross Society does not have independently designed programs specifically for heat stroke, specifically for heat. Our national society tries our best to accommodate the component of heat stroke prevention in awareness-raising activities and also first aid training for heat stroke. For example, the Japanese Red Cross Hiroshima branch came up with the idea to develop a video to raise awareness on how to prevent heat stroke. This video only talks about the prevention and risk reduction of getting heat stroke for 5 minutes, including only key messages that need to be delivered for the public population. It is a very simple video, and the contents include key messages such as causes of heat stroke, negative impacts of heat stroke, and finally prevention measures for heat stroke. Hiroshima branch used acute square for the promotion of the video to attract people's attention for heat stroke. And this squirrel explains well using a really short time. So the video was developed with the support of a volunteer registered in the Hiroshima branch. And according to the Hiroshima branch, this volunteer is often invited by local authorities, such as schools, local companies, and nearby villages, to provide only short-time lessons on heat stroke prevention. When the volunteers are not available, the branch staff will replace the volunteer and go to communities to provide short-time training. This initiative is to develop this. This video was during the development process. The initiative was triggered by the pandemic situation, as our branches stopped providing the physical trainings. So instead, they decided to make this video to distribute our key messages for the Japanese national. If you don't mind, can we go to the next slide, please? This is also about the video for awareness building. Actually, this example is a good practice because I found that this IEC materials were prepared by the Japan government, and one of our branches decided to make use of the IEC materials prepared by the government, and they made it a short video to also deliver only key messages for the Japanese public. During this process, only the essence was drawn well, and they made it a very short video. So from this example, we can learn that we do not have to develop new IEC materials for heat if it was already available somewhere. And for that, we need better collaboration with the government and local organizations to distribute our most important messages. Next slide, please. So if we had time, I wanted to just start our videos, but this time, unfortunately, we can't. So I will share the links later through the facilitators. So this is about the first aid training for heat stroke conducted in our country. So the JLCS has a textbook for first aid, and that textbook contains some of heat stroke prevention measures and also initial treatment for the victims of heat stroke. So basically,
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but indeed we are quite a bit over time. I think that your point on we don't need to always reinvent the wheel, and the importance of collecting existing information is pertinent also to this presentation. In terms of your first aid for heat stroke guidance, let's please collect that. This is a great regional meeting. Everyone here, I'm sure, will be eager to receive that, as well as pool other first aid resources, such as those that we were introduced to yesterday by our colleagues in Geneva. So, Yuki, thank you so much. Please pool questions for Yuki in the Menti, in the chat. I'm sorry to cut this short. I do believe in the importance of using cute squirrels for public awareness campaigns. Thanks for sharing that. We'll show your video shortly. I would first like to invite the next speaker, without further ado, to join us. So we visited forecast-based financing in urban areas, and we're going to be continuing with the theme of anticipation in Karachi, presented by our colleague from the START network.
Yes, I'm here. I'm Sumera.
Hi, Sumera. Wonderful.
Hello.
Thanks. And Catalina, will we be sharing your presentation, Sumera?
Sure, otherwise I can share as well. Whatever is coming.
Catalina's on it.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so much for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. My presentation is basically has three main components. First of all, the START network. Second is the anticipatory response, and third one is the CAP survey of that response. May I request to please change the slide. Next slide, please. Yes, I'm Sumera, and I'm working as an executive manager with the national organization HANDS in Pakistan, and we are very active member of START network. So I will also be talking about the START network and how we started this project and what are the main things with this. These are the contents of the presentation. This is about the START network, disaster risk financing, then heatwave proposal submissions, approvals, then heatwave anticipatory response, implementation procedure, and then the knowledge, attitude, and practice survey, a few challenges and recommendations afterwards. Next, please. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. STAR network is basically a network comprising of more than 58 agencies, and it's operational in 5 continents across the globe. and it had only the international organizations in the network, but past few years they have also considered the national organizations in the network as well through all that due diligence process. So now it's a combination of national and international organizations in the START network. There is an in-country hub in Pakistan, which is consisting of 18 INGOs, 4 NGOs, and 100 of local partners of those INGOs. NGOs basically implement the projects by themselves, but INGOs do manage their projects through the implementing partners. They are actively engaged in disaster emergency preparedness projects, START Fund Rapid Response, and the START Labs or Drought Financing Facility, that is also called the DRF. And heat wave projects come under this DRF. There are network's core values. They are basically collective innovation, new forms of financing, and localization. Collective innovation means the INGOs and NGOs together in collaboration and in coordination with the respective governments make the plans and work on that. Financing is basically because these are the anticipatory responses, so allocation of the funds and all that stuff comes under these new forms of financing. And localization is basically through the local organizations in collaboration with the stakeholders, with the government and with the communities. Next, please. There are basically 4 pillars for the disaster risk financing in Pakistan. One is hazard prediction models, and we have 3 models under this. The heat waves, floods, and droughts. Then second is timely availability of funds. It ensures the timely availability of funds and coordination and governance structures. In every country, there is a governance structure that starts from the National Steering Committee, then comes under the Secretariat, then comes with the technical working groups on this heat waves, floods, and droughts, and then with the national organizations who are part of those respective working groups. Then this is preparedness and contingency planning by the NGOs. So this all comes under this Pakistan hub under disaster risk financing or DRF in Pakistan. Next, please. Yes, we'll talk about this prediction models, hazard prediction models, that we have 3 models here: heat waves, floods, and droughts. In Pakistan, heat wave season starts from May to June. But in the last years we have also seen, especially in Karachi, that in 2015 there had been a lot of casualties due to this heat wave. So these things are operational since then. So we have maximum lead time of 7 days and the minimum lead time of 4 days. And for 2021, there had been allocation of 500,000 euros for the activities, and we have selected the 6 cities. Previously, we were working in 4 areas of Pakistan. In Sindh, basically, that is the hottest region, and we have also added the hottest region of Punjab, Balochistan, and Sindh. And now we are working in 6 cities altogether this year. For the floods, the season is from May to September, and the model is being developed by JBA consultants. 2021 model will be operational this year, because last year it was not operational. We did not work on that. And approximately the funding for this year is around 800,000 euros, and the area for the model area for this model is Sindh and Punjab. The third model is the drought one. November onwards, it works, and it is being developed by the Reading University. Approximately 300,000 euros for the 2021 is already allocated, and 2020 operational winter wheat November 2020. It has been started, and it covers Sindh and Punjab. And you can see in the map that Punjab, Balochistan, and Sindh, these 3 models are working in these 3 provinces of Pakistan. Next, please. While we talk about the heat model triggers, we have seen that on May 20th, 2020, the heat wave model was triggered in Karachi, because over the 10 days of forecast period, it is, you know, being considered about to work on that. The maximum temperatures were recorded 42 degrees centigrade, and the night temperatures were not dropping below the 30 degrees for consecutive 2 days or more. Then the heat wave is triggered. Fund released to pre-selected NGOs who have already qualified with the network, and activities included the awareness raising, preventive messages on heat strokes through printed, SMS, radio, and social media mediums. The opportunity was also utilized to inform the communities on way to safe during the COVID-19. And there had been, I will discuss in the challenges, that there had been 2-3 things going on simultaneously while working on this. It was COVID, it was Eid holidays, it was so many other things going on. So that was really very tricky and very challenging for us. And activities continued throughout the high risk period, and the remainder of the heat wave season covered 4.5 million of the population and in 6 districts of Karachi. That was only done in Karachi last year, but this year we are working in 6 districts of Pakistan. Next, please. Yes, now I'll talk about the heat wave anticipatory response in Karachi. That was 6 weeks project, and that was funded by the START network in collaboration with Action Against Hunger International, and HAND was the implementing partners. Just a bit introduction about my organization. It was founded by A.G. Billu. He is a professor emeritus pediatrician who laid its foundation in 1979, and within the time period of 41 years, we have been evolved as the largest not-for-profit organization of the country, having integrated development approach and disaster management expertise. And we are now covering, we are having 35 branches across Pakistan, and 29 million population has been accessed through the organization, and in 54 districts of Pakistan we are operational currently. Next, please. Yes. We have submitted the proposal for the heat wave anticipatory response in Karachi, and it was submitted in May. It was the 6 weeks project, and the duration I told you that from May 21st to July 4th. And we implemented this project in collaboration with ACF International. Next, please. And Provincial Disaster Management Authority, Sindh, that is the main stakeholder, the government body in whole of the process. We conducted the introductory meetings. We required the non-objection certificate from the PDMA to start the interventions, hiring of the vendors for the social media, SMS and for FM, campaigns. Weekly reporting tools were, made. Daily routine morning meetings were, conducted, and weekly reports and final reports were submitted. Next, please. Next, please. Can we go back to the slide? Yes, thank you. The process was the heat wave prevention messages. We targeted actually 1 million population, but the population was covered around 4.5 million. There were 4 interventions. One was the FM radio, messages that covered 4.5 million people. These messages were run 2 times in a day for 10 days consecutively. Then we developed the 4 digital videos that was disseminated through the social media, including the HAND's official Facebook and YouTube channels. We also disseminated these videos in the WhatsApp groups. We have different working groups here. We have different, other groups with different stakeholders, other networks. So we also, disseminated those videos, and they further disseminated the videos to their communities, to their networks. 50,000 digital messages, SMS were, dispersed per day. And we also worked on the umbrella shades, in which we got the heat wave prevention messages, as you can see in the presentation. There were heat wave prevention messages on the umbrella, and these umbrella shades were, installed at different, places in Karachi. So this was given to the PDMA Sindh, Provincial Disaster Management Authority in Sindh. Next, please. while implementing these projects, we faced certain challenges because this was the first time anticipatory response in the history of DRF. The project was 6 weeks, and when the trigger was met, it was met on 20th, and soon after 20th, we started this project on 21st of May. The other issue we faced in this whole period was actually the attitudes of the local organizations. Like, we are always into humanitarian response instead of anticipatory response. We are always into response after when some disaster happens, but this was the response before the onset of the some type of hazard. The third challenge was very big challenge. It was Ramzan, and we all fast in Ramzan, and after these were the last week of Ramzan, and these were the holidays when the trigger was met. So all of the staff, all of the we were all on board. We did not avail any type of leave because we had to work. So that was also a challenge, that in those days we had some of our rituals and religious festivities, but which we did not prioritize while doing the response. And the other thing was, in the wake of COVID, it was to acquire the non-objection certificate from the government. That was also very difficult. Offices were closed, and all the coordination was done through the phones, and then successfully we were able to acquire that NOC to start that. Then to assess the appropriate vendor selection due to the lockdown, because some people were working, some people were not working. That was also very challenging, but somehow we managed to do that. Another thing was the electricity issues. There had been so many frequent power outages while we were doing all these interventions in Karachi. So there are a lot of different things happened, and there had been rain afterwards, after in some areas. So there had been a mixture of temperature rise. There's a mixture of rainfall. There are electricity issues, and a lot of things were going on, but managed to implement this project. Next, please.
Samira, I hate to ask, but if you could kindly wrap up with maybe a few.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to the CAP survey just to tell the what happened when, after the completion of the projects, we conducted a CAP survey with the help of WHH, that is also Star Network member organization, and this was the first survey that monitored the implementation of the heat wave in Pakistan. So we can move, you can quickly move the slides. We have 4 questions. We wanted to know what type of mediums people chose, what attitudes have been improved, and what practices they adopted after that. This is the social demographic. We randomly selected 601 participants out of 1 million. Next, please. And this is in 6 districts of Karachi, and I would just discuss the findings. The most effective channels for the heat wave messaging and to understand the extent was about the knowledge and behavior around the heat wave. 60% people received messages through social media. People are more using this social media. 19% through FM radio. In Pakistan, FM radio is being used while you are driving, while you are going somewhere, but the ratio was not as we thought, because people were at home. That was a lockdown situation. Still, we received 19% response that the people received messages from the FM radio. 30% through television and 16% through a friend. People actually talk and disseminate information whenever they receive. The majority of men and women are open to receiving further heatwave messages, that they said that they will definitely, because they also had some prevention things in those messages, so they welcome the messages. 84 respondents somewhat or much more likely to follow the instructions, and 10% of the protective measures taken by the participants, and 35 respondents supported others to take on recommended measures. I have pasted the link here, the whole report of the CAP survey. You will read it, you will find it interesting, and we also programmed this year programming on the findings of the of this CAP survey and the learnings from the already implemented project.
Excellent. please do plug that into the chat for everyone as well.
Okay, I will. Can we go further on the next slide, if there is any? I think there had been some recommendations and challenges would have been the same as almost the same, but yeah.
Thank you so much. I promise that we will have a specific urban follow-up webinar where we really dig into heat waves in the urban context. Thank you so much for the inspiring presentation. Please clap for Sumaira Javid, Executive Manager of HANS Pakistan, on behalf
Thank
of
you so much.
Sumaira, thanks so much. And I am
Thank you
so
so
sorry,
much.
Yuki, you mentioned in the chat, I saw you blamed your poor time management, but it's definitely our fault and our poor time management here today. Everything's just far too exciting. Catalina, have you been collecting everyone's questions on Menti? Are there some questions that we can pose to our esteemed panelists? Yes, you're on mute, I think. Okay. 2 questions. I think these were old Menti. So.
Sorry, Lucy, I was having some troubles unmuting myself. These are actually there are not many comments. I think there are more comments in the chat box, but right now in Menti we don't have much.
All right, I saw a question, for example, from Colin. Colin, would you like to share your question to our colleagues with Bangladesh Red Crescent?
Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
Sajan actually addressed it, but I could repeat that question. In the presentation, Sajan said that there was 197 households were provided, cash grants, etc. So I was just curious to know, given the area and the high density of population, and there would be a large number of at-risk, communities or households in that intervention. What was this, criteria for selecting the 197 households? So I think Shahjahan responded in the chat box, but if you like to add anything, for everybody on this call, I mean, he could go ahead. Yeah, that's from my end. Over.
I also saw you mentioned challenges with Bcash. Maybe you could also answer that a bit as well. Thanks. Saju, if you're with us.
Sorry, Lucy, Shaju bhai, is it on his table? May I answer those questions?
You are more than welcome to, Saladin. Thanks.
Okay. Actually, we transfer cash through Bangladesh Post Office. They can transfer cash if anyone can only have an active mobile phone. But because that is a mobile banking account is required. And we observe that about 25% households provided other house, that is their relatives Bikash account number. That is why they don't have any Bikash account number. So it was more challenging to transfer the cash, and it delayed for 2 days to recheck and change the Bikash account number. That was the challenge.
Thank you so much for the answer. Does anyone else have any questions for our panelists? I don't see too many questions in the chat box, but rather overwhelming praise for the interesting presentations, each and every one. So thanks so much. I'll take a moment. Please do feel free to raise your hand. You have a question to any of the panelists? Khairul, hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for organizing such an learning event. It's really great. Since yesterday, particularly myself, I'm learning so much. Not a question, but I just wanted to add what Salahuddin also mentioned about the big cash. So, that's something I think all of us, we need to think about how the finance related to this whole anticipatory action could be improved. So it took really 3 days for us, or I should say, if I include the weekend also, it took 5 days for us to get the amount that we deposited in the bank to the BCAS account. That's really long for anticipatory action. So the bank took 3 days to act on that. Then it goes to the central bank. They approve that. Then finally it goes to the BCAS account of our own, the GRC account. Then we actually transfer the money to the beneficiary account, which took really short time. It was 2 hours only. So this whole financial process, I don't know how to fasten that, but we really need to work on that to make it really faster. And yeah, that also includes the process of DRIFT, how the money could be transferred faster to the National Society account so that they can work faster. Because from our previous experience, it shows that time also it got really delayed. It took around 7 days. That's really long for early action. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you for sharing that very critical challenge and opportunity with us all. So I believe I'm going to check in with Jerome and Catalina. We are quite over time. Do we have time to take a break? Should we ask everyone here to just bear with us and we can continue into our next section? What do you think?
Well, I think it will be wise to carry on because I would not like our next speaker to rush into their presentation.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I think we should carry on.
Great. Handing the mic over to you then, Jerome, and thanks again for all of the inspiring presentations of all of our national societies and guests. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And yeah, the objective of this workshop is really about sharing, but it's as well about trying to develop collaboration within the Red Cross movement, but as well beyond the Red Cross movement with scientists, practitioners, policymakers. And it is exactly what we aim to do with the next session. So the next session has 2 parts. The first part, we will learn about nature-based solution as a long-term DRR approach to Heatwave, and as well about socioeconomic impact to Heatwave and opportunity for mitigation and adaptation. Then we'll have a second part where we will learn about the ongoing research on the broad field of heat, social and health research, and we will further explore a global initiative. So let's start straight away by the first presenter. It's my colleague from Geneva IFRC, Ninni Ikala Niman, Senior Officer in Nature-Based Solution, and she will present our presentation in about 10 minutes. Ninni, the floor is yours. And as always, yeah, we can ask you questions through the menti.com. Ninni, please go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerome, and thank you, colleagues, for joining today. And so indeed, as Jerome mentioned, I'll be talking about nature-based solutions, and indeed these are kind of longer-term solutions for building resilience. So as a very first question, I would like to ask you to just go to the Mentimeter. When you hear this word nature-based solutions, what do you think of? What comes to mind? And there's, of course, no right or wrong answers here. So just put in anything that comes to mind. So yes, we're seeing some answers. Trees. I know this is a very important topic to IFRC and the Red Cross, Red Crescent family more broadly. Water bodies, green construction, soil health, sustainability, shade. Indeed, this shade link is taking us exactly towards where we want to be discussing today, and the links with heat. Livelihoods, protection, climate change adaptation, indeed. And I very much like this idea of low cost and peace. And indeed, I like that idea that when we think of the environment, we get these kind of ideas of peace and harmony and as well. some of the cultural values we get from nature. Okay, thank you so much to all of you. So I'll start with my presentation. Just making sure that you have a screen. Please let me know if you don't. Perfect. Okay, so we've gone through this first part of the presentation. So the official definition of nature-based solutions, which comes from IUCN and others, is actions that protect, sustainably manage and restore natural or modified ecosystems, but address societal challenges, with the objective of providing human well-being and biodiversity benefits. So we're really looking at the different ways to protect and manage and restore ecosystems or natural resources, and with the primary objective of going for human well-being as well as biodiversity benefits. So when we look at nature-based solutions, so indeed, and as Jerome already mentioned as well, we're often looking at their role in providing disaster risk reduction. They can be also used for climate change adaptation, which of course is very important when we're talking about heat. They can be done for climate change mitigation purposes around land use or forestry, or for overall environmental management, which provide benefits to people. And so what do nature-based solutions look like? So we're talking about wetland restoration, including mangrove restoration. We can be looking at climate-smart agriculture, agroforestry at scale, at urban greening, which is of course very relevant to the topic today, and integrated water resource management, just to mention a few. And so one part of these solutions is that we're looking at scale, so at slightly broader solutions than just small scale tree planting, for example. We're looking at restoration of a landscape or wetlands at scale. And just since I know we have many colleagues from RCRC online today and from national societies, so we often also within our movement talk about greening humanitarian aid. So that's slightly different. So there we're more talking about response and recovery, reducing our footprint, really reducing the impact we have on the environment, whether it's in terms of, for example, local reducing plastic pollution or changing the way or the buildings we use to have less greenhouse gas emissions. That's reducing our footprint. Whilst when we talk about nature-based solutions, we're really looking at resilience, the resilience of communities and how ecosystems can support the communities. And so, as I've mentioned, I mean, one of the reasons, what are the kind of global challenges we're addressing with nature-based solutions? So there's climate change, including heat impacts, there's disaster risk reduction, but also we can be doing this for human health. So the idea of how these can help us deal with heat exhaustion, for example, or heat stroke, food and water security, economic benefits. So all those are also important for nature-based solutions. And I've included this picture on the right just to show that even, you know, how do we apply nature-based solutions? So in the bottom right corner, if we're looking at urban green spaces and the role they might have in climate regulation, for example, we're also looking at how these broader natural resources contribute to the city's well-being. And so how, for example, do we manage forest upstream? How does that prevent flooding in a city? Or if in a coastal area where we're planting mangroves, how does that provide protection functions to the city? Or if we're looking at sustainable management of agroforestry systems, how do we get food from outside cities, which is essential for food security in cities? So it's really looking at that interconnectedness of all natural resources. Just a few examples of nature-based solutions in Asia Pacific. I mean, there's really multiple, there's so many to include. This is just a couple to get a bit of a flavor. And because of a focus on heat, I focused more on cities where nature-based solutions are particularly relevant for heat regulation, but also a few examples from beyond cities. And so urban green spaces, and in particular when we go at scale and we have larger green spaces, can have a function in purifying air and regulating local climate, both by preserving heat, by cooling the air, and by humidifying the air. And so it benefits both within the green area itself, and in particular also the area around. So some of the studies showed up to a kilometre around the green area, it will have this local climate regulation function. And so, of course, the more green space we have in cities, for example, the more protective function it's going to provide at scale. And there's a study on 8 major cities in China where some of these benefits were found. Green roofs is another option, and so those are planting greenery on the top of roofs to reduce heat transfer to buildings, especially in summer. This has been found to be effective. It has both a cooling and an energy saving function. And there's interesting case studies from Shanghai and Hong Kong on this. And it was interesting to hear how the colleague in Vietnam was showing some of the examples they had been looking at for providing some of these cooling functions for buildings through roofs and through engineering solutions. And that's just to say that nature-based solutions is absolutely not the only solution. It should always be seen part as a broader suite of solutions, which might include more technological or engineering solutions as well. And then kind of going more to scale again. So this concept of sponge cities is something that has been promoted in 30 cities in China. And this is really looking at where we go to scale in terms of environmentally friendly urban systems, which look at a combination of both green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, and more grey technological solutions to infrastructure. And here we would be looking at, for example, combining urban green spaces with green roofs, with green waterways, blue waterways, as well as drainage systems in a composite way and interlinked in a holistic approach to absorb, store, infiltrate, and purify rainwater. And they could also have cooling functions along the way. And now this isn't directly related to heat, but this was just to show this point of how we manage our natural resources and nature-based solutions beyond a city also provides benefits directly to the city. So, for example, restoring upland forests can regulate water flows to large cities and help manage flooding and provide economic savings. This is particularly relevant in cities such as Tokyo, which are more relevant on watersheds coming from forested areas. In other areas, such as the Ganges Basin in India or the Yellow River in China, many of the cities are more dependent on watersheds and water flows coming from agricultural land, in which case sustainable management of agricultural lands can provide benefits both for food security as well as to water provision in those cities. So just to wrap up, a few conclusions. So nature-based solutions can reduce exposure and increase resilience to disasters and climate change impacts, including heat waves. They're relevant in both urban and rural settings. Often when we hear the word nature, we think automatically about rural areas, but they're very relevant for urban settings as well. They build on and strengthen community resources and skills, particularly around natural resource management, and often the communities know best about their own land management or resource management. However, when we're thinking about nature-based solutions in the Red Cross Red Crescent setting, there's a few special considerations to consider. So as Jerome mentioned already in the introduction, we're often thinking of scale here. We're thinking of systems. We're thinking about how the environment links to the economy, to health. How does it link to human well-being? And so it's that interconnectedness of a natural system at large. It often takes time. So these aren't the kind of solutions that once we already face the heat wave, we can be rolling out. If we're looking at heat, this is something we need to prepare for in advance, plan for in advance, implement in advance. Whilst it relies strongly on local understanding of natural resources and how they're managed, we also need scientific knowledge. Understanding how ecosystems function can be complex. And what does that mean in practice? Well, then often partnerships are highly relevant. So partnering with local government, with national planning and environmental institutions, with local universities or environmental organizations can all be very relevant ways for national societies to scale up and implement nature-based solutions. And again, a point I was making that they need to be part of broader plans for disaster management or climate change. So nature-based solutions isn't the only solution, it's one part of this whole suite of options we would have for dealing with heat, for example, which would involve planning, infrastructure, engineering, health approaches, capacity building, etc., early warning systems. So it's one part of this broader puzzle. And just as a last slide, here's a few resources that my colleague Ainur, who's our urban expert, has put together on a wide range of city planning and risk assessments, the Urban Action Toolkit as well, which are accessible on preparecenter.org. And then we also have a new toolkit coming out on how to design and implement nature-based solutions, which will also be available on the Prepare Center website. So thank you so much, and I look forward to questions, I believe, which will be later on if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nini. It was so clear and so right on time, just 10 minutes. And I understand the key word here is scale, scale, scale. So we will come back to that later on in the question session.
Super.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jérôme.
So now we are going to give the floor to my colleague from UNDRR, Iria Tuzon-Kaye. Are you here with us? Yes. Good to see you. Thank you.
Yes, I am. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Jeroen, and thank you, everyone. I believe Diana or Lucy may be able to share the screen for me, to share the slides for me. So my name is Iria Tuzon-Kaye, and I work as Risk Knowledge Officer in the Asia Pacific Office for UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. I've been listening to all the different presentations from the national societies, very interesting, and I think Nini's presentation on nature-based solutions is a perfect link for this, as we will emphasize on this point on the interconnectedness of risk and the importance of this, having this systemic approach when looking at understanding risk and addressing them. So I'm not sure if you're able to put the presentation already, Lucy or Katarina?
Sorry, yeah, it's coming through now.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Hope you can see it now.
Yes, perfect. So you can move already to the first slide. Okay. And really, it will be very brief just to share on that point that Jeroen was emphasizing on the different opportunities for collaboration. And we are not an operational on the field agency. We are more a normative UN entity that work more on policy, advocacy, and guidance. But we are mobilizing some partners to come up with some knowledge products on raising awareness about heat waves and the socioeconomic and health impacts, and how we look there more closely in integrating in the different disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation programs. So much linked what Nini was referring before. So this is an upcoming document, not yet finalized, but really highlighting heat-related risk as an increasing and emerging challenge, and especially in the urban context. So try to address what are the evidence that are available so far, the gaps, and some highlighting some good practices. So some of the examples we have heard today from Vietnam, as well as Karachi, will be also highlighted there as good practices. This publication looks really at the impacts in health and livelihoods and the socioeconomic vulnerabilities that determine these differentiated impacts and the driving risks. So looking at this aspect of unplanned urbanization, poverty and inequalities, and social protection gaps, and really trying to bring this in a context of multi-hazard risk and compounding impacts. So looking at heat and infectious disease, heat and water security and sanitation deficits, as you're very well aware, but the challenge of sanitation in slum areas, especially energy systems stressors. And I was listening very carefully to Surima when she was mentioning the challenges with the frequent power outage and electricity cuts while they were trying to implement some of these early actions, and other aspects related to urban heat islands that you have very well addressed during this few days. So this is part of a learning process, and this knowledge was commissioned just to really bring it as raising the policy awareness and the attention from the climate change adaptation and the disaster reduction communities, and highlighting the different learnings from adaptive social protection, nature-based solutions, and multi-hazard prevention and risk reduction, as well as some learnings from sustainable urban management and how upgrading slum upgrading solutions. So retrofitting after disaster events can also contribute in addressing some of the heat risk. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I will not be really presenting all the findings of the document. I think it's still not moved to the next slide, but anyway, I can. I think sometimes there is a lag. Perfect. Thank you. But just highlighting what you will see there in terms of some of the recommendations and how we see from our perspectives and opportunities that might be interesting for you as national societies on engagement on heat-related risk management and taking forward some of these recommendations. So we think, as you have been highlighting, that your engagement in enhancing the understanding of risk and the impacts is extremely relevant. One of the gaps that has been highlighted in this publication is really the difficulties in having impact information, who is being impacted by the heat waves and why these differentiated impacts, and having more detailed data is definitely relevant for anticipatory action and also for raising this awareness. So we believe that you are very well positioned, especially at the community level, on collecting this data on the impacts to better understand all the whole range of socioeconomic and physical vulnerabilities that result in these differentiated impacts. And especially, I think you have been highlighting a lot in the linkages with livelihoods and how losses in income, and beyond just the health impact that maybe have been highlighted more, and there is more research ongoing. We think that you're also very well positioned to supporting this crowdsourcing information, engaging in sentinel systems, and collaborating with research organizations to really validate these prediction models, to test and feedback. And I think all this experience you have had in conducting these surveys on what has been changed and the knowledge and the practices after you conduct awareness raising campaign, that is excellent, because really help ground truthing what is the outcomes and the findings from different research entities. We see as well that you're very well positioned to collaborate with local governments to enhance their preparedness and sharing experiences from other regions and countries and cities, and raising awareness on the relevance and the advantages of these anticipatory actions. Perhaps in some countries there are more experienced anticipatory actions related to other hazards, and but you have already among your own networks a lot of experience also related to heat waves that you can share with each other, even from city to city, from country to country, and definitely the engagement of your volunteers in the community awareness. I think other opportunities for you is really to connect these all these efforts on anticipatory action and awareness to larger and longer term resilience building and livelihood support programs for climate and disaster risk management. So really to making the linkages that it's not just preparing to minimize the impact, but really reducing the vulnerabilities. And you have mentioned many of you, like when you target street workers and ensure that through their programs, you're also providing social assistance to migrant workers or to specific industries that might be very vulnerable, like garment industries worker. And I think definitely you make all the linkages on how can you look at more resilient strategies and livelihood strategies in the context of this growing climate and disaster risk, and other potential opportunities in looking at these local social technology innovations and even potentially using some indigenous knowledge. There is some beautiful examples contributed by NGOs in India in this upcoming publication on how through rehabilitation process after a disaster, I think there's some reference to the Gujarat earthquake, how there was really a lot of research on what are the materials that traditionally were used and what is the thermal performance of these materials and how this can be used to improve insulation and reduce the impacts of heat, even in different contexts, or taking the opportunity of the reconstruction after a disaster event. And next slide, please. So just to conclude that there is another larger opportunities of engagement that we had the opportunity, thanks to Lucy and colleagues from the Urban Hub, to share with you a few weeks ago through this larger initiative in Making Cities Resilient 2030. And I'm aware that your heat wave related actions do not are not only related to urban, but you know very well how important it is in the urban context in Asia Pacific. So this is a larger initiative on Making Cities Resilient 2030, and I know we are now very well engaged as partners, and then we hope that you really can engage your national societies in supporting cities in that resilient pathway. So really bringing the emphasis on multi-hazard approach. So you're engaging in working in cycles, you're engaging working in heat, and you can really highlight the potential cascading impacts as a very tangible manifestation of this climate-related risk. And definitely in understanding the risk as the cities conduct risk assessment that perhaps sometimes don't provide the level of detail that is required to understand at the different communities from a slum area to a rich neighborhood, what are the difference and what could be the different disruptions that occurred because a disaster event, of how they could have, for example, if it is a disruption in the energy supply system due to heat waves or water insecurity issues, definitely those are going to be experienced very differently from neighborhood to neighborhood. So really bringing a very, very local and community level understanding of risk. And then as you are frontline agents at the community level, you can really support the government in understanding all the multiple facets of the vulnerabilities and help contextualizing the risk communication. I heard some examples earlier on how you take these messages and these materials produced by the government, and then you really translate it in very practical and understandable messages for the community. I think that's the kind of opportunities that you should continue doing, and you're already doing, but definitely opportunities to also support the local governments. And then as advocates for more shock responsive and adaptive social protection systems, and demonstrating how the social assistance targeting the most vulnerable in advance of an event can reduce the impact, but also even in the absence of any event, those contributors, social protection schemes contribute to enhance the resilience of the livelihoods and reduce those vulnerabilities. So this is just from my side some highlights on the opportunities for engagement. And once this report will be available, we will be very happy to share with you. And thank you again for your excellent contribution, especially Jerome, for being bearing with us through the long-term process and developing this publication and sharing all the learning and all the network and opportunities to learn what other societies and other research institutions are doing. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, you really highlight so well how the Red Cross movement, national society could further be engaged into heatwave preparedness and response. Thank you for that. I think it's very, I would say, very overwhelming for us to know that our colleagues are waiting for our support and our collaboration. So that's so clear and so well presented. Thank you. I would like now to ask Catalina if we do have questions to both of you. Can you share, Catalina, the Menti.com question? Because I don't see any question in the chat box. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see any. Catalina? Well, while waiting, maybe I have a question for you. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned where the national society could support in different levels, but do you have any specific country in which you would like to focus our intervention? Because I know you are specifically working from Bangkok office. Do you have, as UNDR, a specific country focus in the coming months with regards to heatwave and as well urban context, maybe? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm a risk knowledge officer here, but also a focal point for South Asia. So I know more of what are the different plans and interventions in South Asian countries. So we are currently exploring collaboration with the humanitarian country team in Bangladesh to support an initiative. There was a pilot on doing a subnational informed risk assessment in 3 districts, and now this has been the proposal to scale up to the whole country, to all the districts, to have this subnational. So it's an index-based risk assessment. So it's not really a committee level kind of assessment, but it's still, I think through that process, there will be a lot of discussions at the provincial level, at the district level, and there would be good opportunities to bring, to make sure there is an awareness of the different hazards, of the different vulnerabilities, and then opportunities of using that further to better prioritizing in anticipatory action. And I know Bangladesh colleagues are excellent on that, and there is so many things going on, but definitely a country where there is much more interest, as it will be also one of the pilots of rolling out a global risk assessment framework initiative that is really looking at enhancing the capabilities of governments of understanding really all the dimensions of risk with this multi-hazard perspective, and looking at all these secondary impacts. So from a pandemic, what can happen in disruptions in education, and why events that do not damage any schools disrupt so much education and health services. So this is kind of a larger initiative, but definitely a lot of interest in Bangladesh as well, and Pakistan. And I'm not very well positioned to speak about Southeast Asia because my focus is in South Asia in terms of countries, but I'm happy to hear from other that initiatives and suggestions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. We take notes then. Bangladesh, Pakistan, at least. Yeah, great. I can see not some question, but some comment related to a natural-based solution. Nini, can you see as well the comments?
Yes, thanks, Jérôme, I can. And
I mean, you could expect somehow, one is about
yes.
can we do something at a smaller scale, I understand,
Yes.
and the other one is about, I think, pretty much the same thing, but more about the capacity building
Yeah.
that we need to have in order to do to start working natural-based solutions.
So thank you for these, and these are, I think, exactly the kind of issues we've been hearing from many national societies, so this is really spot on, and thank you for raising these important issues. On the first one, so yes, we very much recognize that yes, I mean, maybe always the capacity, skills and resources might not be there to go at scale from the beginning. And so we're very cognizant of that. And that's one of the things we want to do with this toolkit that I showed you is to see how can we kind of start moving towards nature-based solutions. So if we do smaller level activities and on a smaller scale, they're absolutely valuable. They can, for example, help with food security. They can be positive for the environment. What they may not do is build that resilience at scale or increase that resilience at scale. However, they're absolutely valuable. And with that toolkit, we're looking to do, even when we start with little, how can we then contribute to something bigger and start visioning bigger with that? So absolutely, those smaller pilot projects are still valuable as steps towards nature-based solutions, and we hope to support in that. And is there a guide or tool? So indeed, we are looking to put together this toolkit in the next couple of months, and we'll be piloting it actually in the region in both Philippines and Vietnam, as our Vietnam colleague already mentioned, as we have a project ongoing there. And USAID project we'll be looking at. On the issues of capacities and skills, absolutely. I mean, that's critical to look at how can we enhance those local skills for nature-based solutions. As I mentioned, I think that issues of partnerships is important with local government, maybe environmental organizations, local universities to start strengthening those skill sets. And in terms of job creation, so yes, so, you know, there's examples, for example, of larger scale restoration, often government funded projects around NBS, which can create jobs on a smaller scale. Of course, if we're looking at agroforestry or sustainable agriculture, those can directly contribute to local produce and markets around that. And we could be looking at, for example, ecotourism might be relevant. So those are a few examples of jobs. Does it work in formal settlements? Yes, right. That's very interesting. I think that's a topic that we should explore further, and I'll take very good note on that. And so, of course, there are ways of managing the resources that are there, and often people end up doing unplanned MBS anyway around food security or around the land that's there. So, but what does that mean in that context? Very good point to reflect on further. And I think that's it.
I think that's it. You went around on the question. Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
We take notes that then toolkit will come up sometime in the coming months. So very good news. And as well from here, we take note that the study is soon to be published and shared. So that's as well a great news for our national society. So I think we will have to stop now with both of you. And thank you so much. So let's give a big round of applause to our two presenters. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all of you and for the excellent questions. And thanks, Jerome and Lucy, for great organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we will go to another batch of presentation, and we will start by Jason Lee, Associate Professor, Human Potential Translational Research Program from National University of Singapore, and he will speak about optimizing human health and potential in warning world. So Jason, the floor is yours.
Okay.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jerome. Let me put on my slides.
If you want to, yeah. Otherwise, we can play it for you. It's up to you. If you prefer to actionate your slide.
It's coming in 5 seconds.
Great. It's on the way.
Can you see it?
We can see that it's loading. Yes, we can see it. That's great.
Is it in the presenter notes?
No, but it's slightly small compared to other presentation, but we can still see very well. I think it's fine.
Can you see?
Yes.
Yeah, because it looks slightly small on my end, but I can see.
If you prefer, I can do it for you then.
Can you see my notes also? I have some notes here.
No, we can't see those.
No, they're not visible.
Good.
We don't see your,
That's
that's
what I don't want you to see. Okay, thanks. I'm very aware, we are coming to the end, so there's a certain level of low energy. So I try not to go too detailed. Some of the information has been discussed. So I just bring out the main points that I want to bring across. But before that, earlier on, there was some questions raised, and I thought that is one key reason, why we should have more interactions. And because I'm aware some of those understanding on heat injury preventions, some of those recommendations are actually being updated. But I know, in big organizations, sometimes there's a lack. So for example, I remember there was a question on the recognition of heat stroke. And the understanding today, in fact, is a consensus that it's largely dependent on your mental status, and that is key. Yes, a high body temperature often coexists, but alteration to your mental status is key. And the rest of the signs and symptoms like dry skin, rapid pulse are no longer considered reliable symptom and sign of heat injury. And it's also not evidence-based to say when someone sweats excessively, he has no heat stroke. And also, I think there's a lot of scope for us to engage, in such discussion. And the other one I thought was very critical is regarding the treatment of exertional heat stroke casualties. Today, many have discussed and agreed it's paramount, to cool that individual before evacuating. Often it makes a lot of common sense, right? You want to evacuate the patients, but in many contexts, the route from scenes to the hospital could take some time, and the victim is actually being cooked within. And therefore, if you cool him or her at the hospital, often it's too late. The organs have been damaged, and then you hear news that one organ is failing after another, and usually they pass on after 2 weeks in the most unfortunate outcome. Yeah, so the current recommendation is actually to cool, then run, rather than to scoop and run. So pay more attention to cooling on site. Okay, I think this is has been repeated in many presentations, but I just want to make a point that we don't get numbed to such news, but instead take actions with great urgency, because the magnitude of change is significant not only fiscally, but have significant social economic implications. And especially in my part of the world, when it's often perceived hot, but many are actually unaware of how detrimental heat can be to our overall health, well-being, and productivity. But it's not all doom and gloom. And I hope in one or two of my slides, I will show you actually you use heat creatively. It can at times be a friend and not foe. So one concept, if I may, to quickly emphasize here is we have to differentiate between heat stress and heat strain. They are not the same. Heat stress is the effect on the environment on the person, including the attire worn and the work intensity and duration. Now, while it is important, climatic heat stress is not the sole contributor to the eventual heat strain or heat load incurred on the individual. Now, heat load or heat strain, on the other hand, describes how one responds to the overall heat stress, which is the climatic heat stress, the clothing, and the work. So you can say heat strain is the overall physiological response resulting from all the heat stressors. Also, to make it more concise, heat strain is what we are after, less about heat stress. So here is where old drugs, new tricks. Now, why we need to beat the heat? Because coincidentally, the three pillars or tenets of human performance and well-being is about diet, exercise, and rest. And each of these tenets can be hindered by the heat. It's clear that we all cannot last long in a hot environment. We also know that you cannot sleep or rest well in a hot environment. But here's an interesting fact I'd like to share. Do you notice that we crave for food after the swim? And that is good evidence to suggest that's because of the cooling of the body. And also, if you want to lose weight and somebody asks you to swim and you find it over time is not the most successful, now I hope you know there's one reason. That's because of the craving for food after you swim, because that promotes or augments your appetite. Sometime in Singapore, I wonder, that conversion of non-aircon eating places, we call it hawker centers, to aircon restaurants, it's actually going in lines, with our rate of obesity. So fear not, heat is not a new enemy. I think the first good documentation of heat management begins, in wars and especially after World War II. Of course, before that, there are some documentation, but the first reports, holistic reports, came after World War II. Then in the last 2 decades, it moved on to the sport settings. Then, in recent decades, people has used heat therapy as the way, to augment health, reduce inflammations, improves your circulation, and soothe it. So if you use this creatively, what we have learned so far in heat management in other contexts can be used to augment public health. So my message here is like what you are organizing here, that's fantastic. We must keep on sharing across disciplines, because the solution we are after may be found elsewhere. So the next few slides, I'll just touch on the heat's impact on the wider society. On this, it's very clear that for the workers, maybe soldiers, firefighters, law enforcers, these are the usual 3 key outcomes we are after. And I'm not going to elaborate, but just to let those know who are dealing with this sector. Besides heat injury, productivity, the less spoke about, but the most important factor in the occupational setting is heat-induced accidents, something we need to do more. Going to one end of the spectrum, the heat can also inhibit learning. This is a good recent article that shows temperature, not in classroom in this case, but in that region can affect one's learning. We have commenced work in Singapore looking at adults in relation to learning, and soon, hopefully in Singapore too, we could do more at the children's segments and also in Cambodia. So if a similar association is found, heat affecting learning, then besides making the environment cool, hopefully air condition is not the only solution. There are scope to use technology or material, for example, to make more thermally comfortable school uniforms. From one end of the spectrum to the other end, and we all know from young to the many aging societies in the world that elderly and those with chronic outcomes are poor thermoregulators because of their compromised vasodilation and their sweating response, which are the two key avenues of heat loss. So for example, in Singapore, there is this effort, war against diabetes. And we know that type 2 diabetics individuals suffer from impaired balance and greater loss in strength. And if heat further exacerbates these functional outcomes, we need to curb it so that we can improve their overall life quality in our hot environment. Some of us might be aware, this lack of babies is a perennial problem in Singapore and in also many parts of the world. Several epidemiological experiments over the years have shown these associations between high temperatures and adverse pregnancy outcomes, preterm birth, low birth weight. So in Project Heat Safe, a project I'll touch on in my next few slides very quickly, we also seek to explore such associations. If there is indeed such an association, even in a very tight range of temperature climate in Singapore, it's crucial we intervene the effects of stress even during the prenatal stage. So very quickly, I want to introduce my team from Project Heat Safe. And again, the main goals of Project Heat Safe is to map the complex tracks of heat exposures of human health and work productivity in exertional population. Because by doing so, we believe we can identify sustainable preventive policies and actions that can reduce these impacts. So I see this more than a project, but a capability to support and move our mandates in allowing our people in this part of the world not just to survive, but to thrive in a warming world. I see this as a research hub in this part of the world in Southeast Asia so that we can continually feed relevant information and findings to global network like GENE that you hear from Julie after this, that we can continue to share more contextualized findings to make recommendations more specific and therefore useful. So you can see the group of us here coming from various backgrounds, economies, social scientists, physiologists, epidemiologists, physicians, architects. So we think complex problems need a more collaborative efforts. So we know the effects on work productivity and health are relatively well described in the occupational space. Likewise, climate exposure and impacts on health are also well known in the public space. And I like actually Elspeth, you're here after me, how she put this together. And I quote her, she said in one of our grants, in our grant applications, which turned out to be positive, that the connections between the two domains of occupational health and public health at work and at home are poorly linked. And the knock-on effects across domains are poorly understood, including suboptimal coordinated solutions across the sectors. So, and I quote her, I think this is very promptly put across. So I presented this slide to show the problems we have at hand are really complex, and also keep on sharing, keep on collaborating. And as a physiologist, I always want to include this because this is evidence-based strategies that we can use to beat the heat. So any good physiological solutions is not only effective, but also sustainable. So any good one, you should reduce, attenuate, or increase one's thermal ability, because by doing so, you are essentially expanding your ability to tolerate heat, and therefore you can work longer and work safer. So as I said, not only these are effective, they are very sustainable. Finally, again, I don't have time to go through each of these strategies, but these are proven strategies that have prepared and protect individuals at the harshest environment. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Use these strategies, adapt, modify, and apply in the population of interest, and we'll be okay. So my message is a message of hope. We are not doomed. So finally, such reports on high record heat stress are no longer novel. The signs of global warming are dead clear. I think the ongoing pandemic has reminded us to be future ready. If COVID, that small jaws or shark, is so debilitating, we are experiencing this ongoing, not even upcoming economic crisis. These are painful. Bear in mind that climate change will be the ultimate. So take this as a good opportunity for the full dress rehearsal to prepare what is ahead. So finally, and I hope my short talk has provided some knowledge to inspire you further to partake in these mandates. If not for yourselves, I mean, the picture of children is always very powerful, right? Do it for your children, your children's children's. I hope you like this photo because I like it a lot. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. It was really inspirational, as you say. And thank you as well for highlighting some potential issue on the definition we provide to exhaustion and heat stroke, and as well as in the methodology we are proposing to deal with it. I already sent you an email to put you in link with our colleague from the Global First Aid Center. Maybe you can have an exchange with them. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
Now we'll have next presenter is Dr. Elspeth Oppermann from Munich University. She's as well working actually with Jason with the National University of Singapore. Hello, Elspeth. Welcome.
Hi there. Thanks so much. I think you're sharing my slides.
We will, yeah.
Yes.
My colleague Catalina will do it. Thank you.
Lovely. Hopefully it behaves okay. I know PDFs are a bit glitchy. So I'll just go right ahead. I want to give a very super quick introduction to how social scientists in particular can assist you in research on heat health in the context of aid and emergencies, and what opportunities there are to do this. So if we just pop to the next slide. I wanted to start by saying I know that a lot of practitioners are quite frustrated with academics as being sort of out of touch or idealists with very different objectives and timelines. And I just wanted to say that over the last 10 years, I think the sort of gaps have been shrinking. Increasingly, academics are required to buy their funding schemes to make sure their research has impact, and to evidence that through collaboration with organizations such as your own. And there's probably no organization globally that matches the Red Cross movement for its depth and breadth of impact. So just to say that collaboration with you, including at the national society level and for local projects, is highly attractive to the academic community. So do take advantage of us in that respect. So I suppose to go back to basic principles of what we have to offer in terms of capacity and capability, really it's having access to dedicated research funding, having time to do the bulk of sort of background research and analysis that you may not have time to do, being up to date on state-of-the-art analysis techniques, and writing peer-reviewed publications. So your research gets assessed according to international scientific standards, which means that we can support you in not only improving your approaches, but demonstrating the robustness of your approaches, which I think is really useful to donors. Next slide, please. Okay. In terms of social science itself, I mean, it's such a broad church, it's really impossible to summarize. I'm sure you know that it spans quantitative to qualitative approaches, and they can be used together in multidisciplinary studies, including in combination, as Jason's mentioned, through the HeatSafe project with the hard sciences, such as physiology or climate science. And so in your work, I'm sure you're familiar with quite a range of examples, such as the CAP survey methods that have been mentioned, focus groups, and so on. But I suppose what I want to say is if you're finding that there are particular areas that you're not getting traction on for key issues, there's a much wider range of methods and project designs out there that you can take advantage of. So of course, you can start with social scientists who work in public health or development, but there's actually a very wide range of people working on heat health across geography departments, sociology, anthropology, architecture and planning, design, ecology, and so on. So it really depends what your particular research question is as to who can best help. There's places to start looking for assistance with this and how to make connections. The UNDRR example we just had was great. Also CDKN or GIN networks such as that. And so that's a plea to go and make the connections. I'll close with 2 examples of heat health projects that I'm involved in, which are just to demonstrate one particular approach, a very niche approach, if you like, And I'll bring these up because they target the issue of behavior change that was raised yesterday, and also provide an example of collaboration with the Climate Centre. Thank you for the next slide, that's great. So both projects actually use a social practices framing and ethnographic methods to better understand everyday heat management practices, as well as how heat exposure, exertion, hydration, rest, and cooling are implicit in the ways that people go about their everyday lives. Now, the first project, as Jason mentioned, Heat Saved, has an ethnographic component, and we use video walkthrough techniques and filmed observations of workers to understand how they both consciously and unconsciously are exposed to heat or exert themselves, and the means of heat management or recovery that are really immediately available to them and any barriers to their use. Now, understanding everyday practice is crucial for understanding why exertion and exposure happen in the first place, but it's also crucial for understanding why interventions sometimes don't work. And that's because of competing social norms, alternative objectives, or missing skills, materials, or technologies that prevent measures from being desirable or practicable in that moment, even when people in principle, as is often reflected in CAP surveys, know about them or agree with them. Now, I suppose another way of putting this is that nobody wants to get heat stressed, and it almost always happens because people are doing something else that they perceive to be essential or incompatible with heat management measures in that moment, such as standing on a hot, busy road to sell goods because they need an income. And so the key to successful heat health then is helping them to achieve those practices that they do anyway in the least risky way possible. And to do that, of course, you have to know what those practices are in the first place, hence the ethnographic approach. If we move to the next slide. So the second project combines the approach that I just spoke about with one that was developed by the University of Edinburgh as part of the Moving Energy Initiative. And this examined how cooling practices are really shaped by cultural heritage, identities, and local environmental expertise. So a real focus on the local here. So the pictures show some examples of how vernacular evaporative cooling technologies have been adapted for contemporary use in IDP camps. And so we apply this, if we move to the next slide, we apply these two approaches, which is sort of a cultural material understanding of localized heat and cooling practices in the Cool Infrastructures project, which really focuses on informal settlements in Karachi, Hyderabad in India, and also Jakarta, with our excellent partners there whose logos I've put up in case you want to reach out to them. And finally, next slide, please. As part of this larger project, we had the opportunity to collaborate with the Climate Centre to research how COVID-19 management and heat management itself interacted for low-income residents in those cities. And so with this, we were really privileged and glad to receive the insight of IFRC members who were crucial to the design of the survey instrument. And the VNRC even replicated the survey in Hanoi. So the Climate Centre is currently reviewing the project report and the approach. So I might just end with a kind of watch this space for our initial collaboration, but hopefully there are many more to come. Thank you. Last slide, if you like. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for highlighting the collaboration already existing somehow between the Red Cross movement and research, and to as well encourage us for more cooperation. You say at the beginning, use us. So we will try to do that. You say use us and work with us. So now we are going to have a next presentation, which is from Professor Saini Yang from the Beijing Normal University, Secretary of the UNDR Asia Pacific Science Technology Academia Advisory Group. Professor Saini, yes, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can, definitely.
Oh, cool.
You want us to play your slide?
Yeah, yes, please. Please help me to play my slides. Thank you.
We will do that. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to take this chance to thank the organizer for inviting me. I'm really happy to have this chance to share some of our research with everyone And also we're looking for some potential opportunities for collaborations on this heat wave adaptation and risk analysis. Is it possible for, is this slide in a display model or not? Yeah. So can everyone see the slides?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I'm Sunny Yang. I worked in the Academy of Disaster Reduction and Emergency Management at Beijing Normal University. And we recently just started a new school called National Safety and Emergency Management. And the purpose for this new school, research institution, is to start up some, initialize some research on environment safety, climate change safety, occupational safety, etc. So, you know, as I said before, I'm really happy to have this chance to share some of our existing research on heat wave risk analysis. In the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think I'm probably gonna skip this part. We right now in BNU we have our own global disaster data platform called GDDAT. I forgot to update here, and we also analyzed the heat wave events in the past 30 years in China and the global, and we can see a very clear decadal impact. Well, we see that the numbers affected are huge, and if we look at the potential global climate change data, we know that this impact can be huge, even larger. Next slide. And we know that with the climate change, there actually are more frequent heat wave events. And it's not necessarily due to, always necessary due to this temperature increase, but due to this more frequent extreme event. And I think most of you are more familiar with this heat-related disease. Next slide, please. And in the past 5 years, we had a national research project, which is really to analyze, to perform. I hear a lot of noise in my headset. I'm not sure if everybody can hear me right now.
We can hear you very well. No problem.
Oh, cool.
No, we can hear you very well. No problem.
Okay, thank you very much. So if we look at this data, the left row, the left column, sorry, shows the number of heat wave days and in the history, and the second column shows the heat wave days in the future, 2081 to 2100, and then the column C shows the change of this heat wave days. The data from the CIMIC-5 data with 14 GCM models, and of course we use the historical data, which is from the ECMWF. We use the ERL interim data. And also here, to do this exposure analysis, we use this projected population data. And the resolution is 0.5 degree times 0.5 degree. So from the first row is about the heat wave days, the second row is about population, and the third row is about the exposure. So from here, we can see which area will be the most impacted area. Most of them are clustered along the equator. And the red bars on the side shows the latitudinal distribution of this impacted population. So we can see this heat wave events actually are quite spatially clustered. So with this type of analysis, we can have those hot zones, which area, which countries will be most affected by heat wave in the future, and they probably are the research hot zone. All right, next slide. Yes, and also we use the standard IPCC global zoning kind of like separate the whole world into 26 regions. And now they have even more. This is the old zoning. And the interesting thing is we really want to find out what is the difference between the different regions and also what are the major contributing factors. Here we use a very simple method, and we separate this increment of exposure into a climate factor, population factor, and a coupled factor of climate factor and population factor. And then the interesting thing is we can see that in different regions, yeah, most of them do have very significant increase in this heat wave population exposure, but the contributing factors are different. Some are more due to this climate factor, but some are due to those population factors. It's because those population in those areas will dramatically increase that it will have more heat wave exposure. So with different type of contributing factors that actually give us some hint of how to what should we focus in adaptation process. Next slide, please. So this is one type of like macroscopic research we have, and another type of research is more microscopic. One example is we collaborate with the China CDC and collect the heat-related disease data in the past 5 years. Well, it's more than 5 years in Shanghai, and we try to analyze the heat health systems because in most countries, we have some kind of early warning system, as it has been mentioned in the other presentations. Well, though they have all these different types of early warning system, the effect has never been, well, the performance has never been rarely be examined. So yes, we do have different type of early warning. Then so what? Does it work? Does it deliver what it promised? So we actually look at the different countries. They have different threshold. They have different parameters, and then we try to see that what is going on with the data we got from the China CDC. We try to see that what's going on in Shanghai. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So yes, yeah, this one. Thank you. So here we try to synthesize this climate, well, the weather data and the heat-related disease and mortality data, and try to understand what is the performance of the heat wave, the different heat wave warning system in Shanghai. Next slide. Shanghai, probably everybody is quite familiar with it. It's a super mega city in China with a population of more than 20 million, 24 million. It's a small city comparatively compared to other mega cities. The area is small, so it's very dense and very crowded place. And the social development level is relatively high because the gross GDP has already surpassed. This is all data for 2 years ago. Right now, it's more than I think 500 billion per year. So it's relatively the most developed area in China. Next slide. So here you can see the data we have. We have the meteorological data, and we have the China CDC's heat-related illness data, and then we analyze we collect a different early warning system for Shanghai Meteorological Services System, the China Meteorological System, and WMO system, and the US, the NOAA system, and try to see that, okay, since we have all these different heat wave early warning threshold or standards, which one works better in this region? So next slide. Well, we have some kind of statistical analysis. Well, here I want to skip this one. Next slide, thank you. Next. All right, so here we can see this, after the different early warning system, they have different indicators and a different threshold. And also, they separate this early warning into different levels in order to provide a different guidance for operation. Next slide. Next slide. So we established some kind of effective evaluation and try to see which one works better. And the next slide. I want to skip all this technical details. Thank you. Yeah. So, well, after a lot of examination assessment, we noticed that actually there's all this early warning system, they're not really performing that well, because even they have when they have early warning, they still have significant number of heat-related illness cases. When they don't have that early warning with that temperature, they probably have the same number of cases. And also, when we look at the spatial distribution, we notice that it's quite different. In some area, this distribution of cases are more located in those warned days, like early warning can identify those dangerous cases, but in some area it's much worse. Then we further look at the demographic feature of this analysis. Next slide. Well, I think these are too technical. Next slide, thank you. Next slide, thank you. Yes. So the interesting thing here is when we look at these demographic features, we notice that because traditionally we believe that infants and the senior people, they are more vulnerable for heat waves. And when we look at this detailed data, we notice that actually the majority, most cases with this heat-related illness actually are composed by youth and middle-aged males, and male suffered more than female, and also this younger age and middle-aged people suffered more than infant and senior people. So then later on, we look at the Shanghai's early warning action menu. So we notice that actually this reported heat-related illness cases are mainly come from these outdoor activities. So those are basically, they are walkers, they are students, they have to have some kind of outdoor exercise, so they really cannot avoid this type of accident. So this gives us some hints. Well, I have to say Shanghai is a quite developed country, developed city, and they have very nice early warning system, and also they have pretty nice DRR system. So they will send out guidance for residents when there is a heat wave warning. But still, for those people who have to work outside, they basically have no option. So what we are thinking is, I believe that for a different group of people, we probably need different types of standards for heat wave warning. So that means, for example, right now we use the 35-degree as a city threshold, but probably for outdoor walkers, this temperature needs to be reduced. And our early warning system need to be more customized and tailored. Next slide.
Dear Professor, I'm sorry, but we will.
I think it's already my time. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I just want to mention that there are lots of interesting work going on related to heat wave in China. So right now, I just want to point out some future work directions. So if anybody is interested in collaboration, we really welcome that. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much, and I think it is a very interesting study about the effectiveness of early warning, early warning in Shanghai. And I think your conclusion about designing triggers specific to group age is very interesting. I don't know how we can do that in practice for the records movement, but we take note. Thank you. Now we are going to close with the last but not the least presentation from the Global Heat and Health Information Network by Julie Tran from NOAA. Please, the floor is yours. I'm very sorry we are super late, but I think it's very important to close by the Jean because you are aiming at basically collaboration and networking, and it's good to close by such a kind of presentation. Thank you.
All right. One moment. Hopefully you can see my slides. Is that correct?
Yes, we can, but it's not in the presentation mode. It's still
in. Okay, let's try that.
So you need to.
I'm seeing it in presentation mode myself. Let me try this.
I believe Catalina is sharing, so we can see the slides Catalina is sharing right now.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. Then we will do it through Catalina if you don't mind.
Okay. All right. Then let me get back onto the slide here. So thank you very much to the organizers and Jerome and some of you I know through Jen. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you today and to wrap it up. The last thing between you and the end of a conference, and it's been great. I was not able to join yesterday, but the talks today have been fabulous. My name is Julie Turton, as Jerome said. I'm actually representing the Global Heat Health Information Network. It is run by Joy Shumat-Guimot out of the Joint Office for Climate and Health. It's joint with WMO and the World Health Organization. She could not be here today, but I've been involved in helping launch GEN, and I'm on the steering committee along with the Red Cross Climate Center. So happy to be here today. Next slide, please. What I wanted to really ask you all, I'm going to go through these few slides rather quickly, but think about this as I'm doing this. You've learned a lot about what happens with each other, what's going on around your community. Imagine how much is going on around the world that we don't know about. So if you take the context here that the temperatures are rising, as you've heard, I'm sure repeatedly. Next slide, please. And you know that there are huge impacts on urban environments. More people are going to be living in urban environments, and the impacts are myriad in urban and rural environments, but we have a large focus on urban here. Next slide, please. We also know that that's okay. There's a lot of impacts on occupational heat and safety, outdoor workers, rural workers, all kinds of occupational health and safety issues. You've heard about many of them already today, or probably yesterday as well. Next slide. And not only that, but we know in this one, please just click through, it's heat and wildfires, heat and drought, heat and disasters, heat and flooding. What does heat do on the compound and cascading effects? So you put all this together, next slide please, and think about all of the activity that's happening around the globe to manage these heat risks over time. And we know that we're going to have more heat waves, as we heard. The impacts are only going to increase. The heat waves are going to be more severe. We were not learning well enough, fast enough together and from each other to really make concerted effort and usable actions to reduce heat risk on multiple timescales. So let me just reframe that. It isn't just during a heat wave, it's across multiple timescales. So yeah, right there, perfect. So the reason we started and launched the Global Heat Health Information Network was precisely to do that coordination on, raising awareness about the urgency of the issue, communicating with each other, sharing information, learning from each other, and actually providing a little bit of rigor to understanding the research needs and gaps, all the way to the operational use and the effectiveness of certain interventions and actions. So it's an end-to-end from science to action, and from researcher to decision maker, and from timescales, from heat waves to long-term planning. So it's really, how do we learn from each other? How do we move further, faster forward together than individually? So GIN is a network of scientists, practitioners, and policymakers. We serve as knowledge brokers. We have a website, it's a resource hub.
We have a member-driven forum, a global forum on heat. We've only had one. The next one was supposed to have been during COVID year. We had some master classes instead. But we are not a grant-making organization. It's a network of people to learn from each other and hopefully then put grants together after and help facilitate that. Next slide, please. This is a handful of the core membership, but we have about almost 2,000 members. We have a newsletter that has a distribution of about 1,500, and it is basically founded on diverse principles of and diverse expertise and perspectives, motivated folks, and really scientific integrity and shared principles. There are 5 pillars that we talk about in just a second that support the network and how we approach the problem. Next slide, please. I want to pause for just a second and note again that Red Cross Climate Center is on our steering group, and we've had the pleasure of working with Jerome a bit, Jason, and many of the folks on this call already. So we're looking to facilitate that more. So Jim's focus: increasing awareness, building partnerships, synthesizing information, whether it's scientific information and research gaps or information about how to map urban heat islands and what methodologies are going to be most effective under what conditions, or what are the most useful adaptation measures. Sharing expertise across resources and helping people find each other. And then leadership and action. I used to say advocacy, it means different things, but really promoting actions like what you're all doing here to really address heat risk on multiple timescales. Again, I'm going to reiterate, on multiple timescales. Next slide, please. This should be the 5 pillars. Basically, I'm not going to go into huge detail here for lack of time, and also you're already doing it. The whole point is that we want to make sure that the research is driven by real health applications, by real health questions, by decision makers on the ground, whether you're in the disaster response community, public health community, or some other community. Somebody who's actually trying to solve a problem. So we go all the way from building the partnerships and sustaining that dialogue all the way to the interventions in the end. And at every piece of the way, there are research questions that we try to synthesize and feed back into the research community, observations, and actually interventions and actions. So I'm learning an awful lot about what you're actually doing on the ground. And there's actually an ask of you coming at the end here, because we are creating an action platform that will synthesize the actions and interventions that we're learning about around the world, so that it becomes a resource for everyone to use in a more comprehensive way than what we have now. You'll see also that our activities are focused on regional networks, pilot projects, and this is for our work plan for the coming year, new research and technical products, like we're redoing the WMO heat health early warning system guidance documents. So we do things like that. Next slide, please. I'll go ahead and skip that, in the interest of time. Next slide. So just a few of the types of things that we've done. We are really interested in helping facilitate regional or sub-regional actions, and also producing heat products and heat forecasts at not just heat wave timescales, but seasonal timescales and outlooks about heat waves and the scenarios I was very interested in listening to. So we've helped facilitate that with the South Asia Heat Health Summit. We also did a climate outlook forum that was focused on health in Southeast Asia. We've done some more innovative kinds of things with a group at the Lawrence Center. And then we did a whole series on heat and COVID-19. And it was, I think, maybe about 75 authors on a series of information sheets that many public health departments actually participated in and then used themselves for reference. So we all wrote one set of information that many health institutions used, including the US CDC. And then we've done a series of master classes. Some of them would be very relevant for you. And we're also thinking of doing a few more on mapping urban heat islands, understanding vulnerable populations, and again, assessing what interventions are most effective under what conditions. We've done a few on urban heat islands already, and you can see this on the website as well. Next slide, please. We've also done some work on economics and a masterclass series on